Tonight, we're diving deep into 2 hours of real Pokémon videos to fall asleep to tonight. But before we begin our journey into real-life Pokémon lore, I want to take a moment to welcome you. Whether this is your first night here, or you've made stellar sleep part of your nightly routine. For those of you who've been joining us consistently, I want to thank you for being such an integral part of our channel. Be sure to share this video with someone you know who loves Pokémon. If you're falling asleep with us tonight, let me know in the comments how many nights in a row you've been here. And if this is your first night, just comment day 1. I'll be tracking our progress right alongside you. Now let's get back to the video. Imagine for a moment that you are walking through your local park on a Tuesday afternoon. The sun is filtering through the oak trees, the air is crisp, and the world feels exactly as it always has. But then, you hear a rustle in the tall grass that sounds just a bit too heavy for a squirrel. You turn your head expecting a stray cat or a bird, but instead, you see the unmistakable glow of a fiery tail. A small orange creature with wide, curious eyes looks up at you, its breath visible as a tiny puff of smoke in the cool air. In that single heart-stopping second, the boundary between our reality and the world we have dreamed of for nearly 30 years simply vanishes. This is no longer a video game. This is no longer a cartoon or a trading card in a plastic sleeve. This is real life. Tonight we are stepping into a world where the extraordinary is ordinary. We are exploring the profound, terrifying, and beautiful reality of what it would actually look like if Pokémon lived among us. We aren't talking about the bright, saturated pixels of a handheld console. We're talking about the texture of fur, the wet sheen of scales, the crackle of actual electricity in the humid air, and the sheer weight of a creature that could level a skyscraper if it felt threatened. What would it truly feel like to share our streets, our forests, and our homes with these pocket monsters? The stakes of this shift are higher than we often care to admit. If Pokémon were real, our entire civilization would be fundamentally restructured from the ground up. Think about the energy crisis. Why would we burn fossil fuels or build massive nuclear plants if a handful of Electabuzz could power an entire metropolitan grid with a single afternoon of work? Think about the way we travel. The airline industry would collapse overnight if people could simply climb onto the back of a Pidgeot or a Dragonite to cross the ocean in a matter of hours. But with that wonder comes a deep, unsettling danger. We often treat Pokémon as friendly pets, but in a real-world setting, a Charizard is a flying apex predator capable of melting solid steel. A Gengar isn't just a spooky face in the dark, it is a literal shadow entity that could haunt your home without you ever knowing why your luck has turned sour. The balance of power on Earth would shift instantly. Humans would no longer be at the top of the food chain. We would be neighbours to gods and monsters. This brings us to the great mystery that has captivated us since 1996. Why do we want this so badly? Why is the human heart so drawn to the idea of these creatures existing in our physical space? Is it a desire for companionship that transcends the human experience? Or is it a longing for a world that feels more alive, more magical, and more interconnected than the one we currently inhabit? We look at our concrete jungles and our glowing screens, and we feel a void. We fill that void with the dream of a Squirtle helping a firefighter or a Machoke helping a construction crew. We imagine a world where nature isn't just something we observe from a distance, but something we partner with, train with, and grow alongside. But how would it actually look? That is the question we are answering tonight. We have gathered 2 hours of the most immersive, realistic, and breathtaking footage ever captured of Pokémon in the real world. This isn't just a collection of clips, it is a window into an alternate dimension. You will see the way a Bulbasaur camouflages itself in a deep jungle. You will see the terrifying scale of a Gyarados breaking the surface of a dark, stormy ocean. you will see the quiet domestic moments of an Eve curled up on a sofa. This is a journey designed to let your mind wander, to let the stress of your day melt away, and to let you finally inhabit the world you've been visiting in your imagination for decades. As you settle in, let the sounds and sights wash over you. Forget the limitations of our world for a while. Stop worrying about the bills, the work, and the noise of the modern age. Tonight, the tall grass is calling. Tonight, the skies are filled with wings of every colour. Tonight, we are going to see what happens when the fantasy becomes the reality. Close your eyes if you must, or keep them fixed on the screen as we transition into this silent, beautiful, and slightly dangerous new world. The journey begins now, and for the next 2 hours, you're no longer just a viewer. You are a trainer, an explorer, and a witness to the impossible. Let us step through the veil and see the world as it was always meant to be. It was just after dusk on a humid summer night in the outskirts of Kanto when a nondescript sedan rolled through the quiet grid of residential streets, its dash cam silently logging every unremarkable moment. The driver, a middle-aged salaryman named Hiroshi Tanaka, had flicked on his wipers against a light drizzle, the kind that turns asphalt into a mirror of sodium streetlights. Nothing out of the ordinary, until the frame froze on a burst of yellow electricity, jagged and alive, crackling across the screen like bottled lightning unleashed. You can still pull up that footage today, grainy and compressed from endless shares across social feeds. It shows the street ahead empty, save for a flicker at the edge of the frame. A brilliant yellow arc, thicker than any power line surge, pulsing with an inner glow that defies the dim conditions. Hiroshi slammed his brakes, heart pounding, as the light vanished into the shadows of a nearby alleyway between two modest apartment blocks. He swore later in interviews that he felt the air hum, a static charge lifting the hairs on his arms, even through the closed windows of his car. Word spread fast in those tight-knit suburbs, where neighbours know each other's cars by sight. By morning, Hiroshi's clip had hit local forums, then national news aggregators. Eyewitnesses emerged from the woodwork. One elderly woman walking her Shiba Inu claimed she saw a small blurred shape dart from the alley, its body trailing sparks like a living fuse. A jogger pausing for breath described a high-pitched whine, almost playful, cutting through the rain's patter before everything went silent again. These weren't wild conspiracy types. They were everyday folks, their accounts aligning on that unnatural yellow flash, the ozone tang in the air that lingered like burnt wiring. Local authorities moved quickly to pour cold water on the frenzy. The Kanto Prefectural Police issued a statement by noon, labelling the dashcam video a sophisticated digital hoax, pixels manipulated with off-the-shelf editing software, they said, citing inconsistencies in light refraction and frame artifacts. Experts from the nearby university's media lab backed them up on TV, demonstrating how a simple overlay of stock lightning effects could mimic the burst. Hiroshi protested, uploading raw files and metadata, but skeptics pointed to his modest online presence, whispers of a publicity stunt rippling through comment sections. Yet doubts crept in among the officials themselves, hushed in precinct hallways. One junior officer, who reviewed the original footage before it went viral, noted how the electromagnetic interference spiked readings on nearby traffic cams, far beyond what CGI tampering could fake. Residents started swapping stories at the corner konbini, pets acting skittish that night, porch lights flickering without cause. The dismissal felt too pat, too rehearsed, as if someone higher up wanted the incident buried under the hoax label before questions multiplied. A few days later, the real puzzle surfaced in Yoyogi Park, not far from those suburbs where joggers and Tai Chi groups gathered at dawn. Groundskeepers arrived to find patches of scorched earth near the cherry blossom grove. Not your typical campfire scars, but fused glass-like craters rimmed in a fine, glittering residue. It shimmered yellow under the morning sun, magnetic to the touch, Compasses nearby spun wildly, and a curious child who poked it came away with fingertips buzzing numb for hours. Scientists from Tokyo's environmental labs descended, cordoning off the area with yellow tape that seemed almost mocking. They scraped samples into vials, their Geiger counters silent, but multimeters off the charts for residual energy. The residue defied categorization. No ash from fire, no metal slag from industrial spill, just an elemental powder that conducted electricity in pulses, as if echoing a heartbeat. Park visitors who'd wandered close reported headaches, a faint metallic taste on their tongues, and vivid dreams of sprinting shadows that night. News crews swarmed, but authorities doubled down, attributing it to a freak atmospheric event combined with urban pollution. Ignore the eyewitnesses, they urged. Chalk it up to collective hysteria fueled by the dashcam hoax. Hiroshi Tanaka watched from his living room, the park footage looping on his screen, feeling vindicated yet uneasy. That yellow residue clung to shoes like glitter from hell, tracking into homes across the ward, a subtle reminder that something had brushed our world and left its mark. Whispers grew in online pockets, forums dissecting frame-by-frame analyses, chemists anonymously testing residue scraps in home labs. Patterns emerged. The electricity's waveform didn't match natural lightning, more like a bioelectric discharge from deep-sea predators. Eyewitness sketches converged on a compact form, ears perked, cheeks pouched with stored power. Pikachu, some called it, half joking at first, borrowing from old cartoons that suddenly felt prophetic. You might dismiss it as coincidence, but consider the timing. Kanto's power grid logged unexplained surges that week, streetlights strobing in sync with distant thunder that never arrived. Hiroshi kept driving those same routes, dashcam rolling obsessively, convinced the flash was no glitch but a glimpse of the impossible breaking through. The park's craters healed over with forced sod, but the residue's glow haunted soil tests for months, hinting at biology woven into raw energy. As these threads tangle, questions mount about what manner of creature could wield such power, leaving trails that rewrite our understanding of life itself. What hidden mechanisms allow a living being to channel lightning like breath? We'll unravel that in Chapter 2, Biology of the Impossible, where the science behind these elemental anomalies starts to take shape. What lingered after that dismissed dashcam footage wasn't just doubt, but tufts of impossibly bright yellow fur, snagged on suburban fences in Kanto, glowing faintly under moonlight like forgotten embers. You can picture the moment a jogger first spotted them, those silken strands catching the dawn light, crackling softly with static that raised the hairs on their arms. Local wildlife experts scooped up the samples, sealing them in sterile bags before the skeptics could label them confetti from a cosplay parade. But when those bags reached the hands of geneticists at the Institute for Anomalous Biology, everything shifted. Dr. Elena Vasquez, leading the team, remembers the air in the lab thickening as they unboxed the first viable specimen under ultraviolet lamps. The fur didn't just shimmer, it pulsed, tiny sparks dancing along the tips like fireflies trapped in fibre. They started with basic sequencing, threading the strands through automated analyzers that hummed through the night. What came back shattered expectations. The DNA helix twisted in patterns no earthly mammal could claim, laced with nucleotide chains that folded into nanostructures resembling miniature circuit boards. Deeper scans revealed proteins engineered for conductivity, amino acids stacked like voltic piles, each layer primed to shuttle electrons faster than a lightning strike. These weren't mutations. They were blueprints for something alive with purpose. As Vasquez's team peeled back the layers, first microscopically, then with electron beams, they uncovered follicles embedded with piezoelectric crystals, harvesting mechanical energy from the slightest twitch into bursts of electricity. One tech whispered during a late shift, It's not fur, it's a solar panel crossed with a taser. But the real revelation waited inside, demanding they pivot to imaging the creature's rumoured form. Piecing together shed samples with eyewitness sketches, they modelled a small rodent-like frame, ears pointed like antennae. Then, in a preserved clump matted with dried plasma, they found it. A fist-sized organ nestled where a heart might beat in ordinary beasts. Dubbed the thunder sac by the team, it resembled a glandular battery, walls lined with specialised cells swollen with electrolyte fluids. Cross-sections under cryo-electron microscopy showed membranes riddled with voltage-gated ion channels, denser than anything in electric eels or stingrays. These channels didn't just open and close, they amplified, drawing from a core of metallic nanoparticles suspended in a gel matrix. Lab tests confirmed it. Stimulate the sac with a probe, and it discharged arcs up to 50,000 volts, enough to fry a smartphone mid-call. Yet the tissue regenerated the charge in seconds, pulling from ambient humidity, converting water vapor into ionic fuel through enzymatic wizardry that mimicked artificial photosynthesis. Vasquez's notes from that breakthrough night fill pages with awe. "The sac isn't generating power," she wrote. "It's summoning it, folding quantum fluctuations into usable current." They wired prototypes to oscilloscopes, watching waveforms spike in rhythmic pulses, 10 Hz, 20, matching the cheek pouches described in sightings. No external input required. The organ fed on its own waste heat, recycling entropy in a loop that laughed at conservation laws. And that's where thermodynamics enters the fray, unraveling everything you thought you knew about biology's limits. Picture the second law, that ironclad rule dictating energy's inevitable sprawl into disorder. These Pikachu defy it through what the team terms biological fusion, cellular reactors fusing hydrogen isotopes scavenged from air and diet into helium, releasing energy in controlled microblasts. Isotope ratios in the fur samples screamed impossibility. Deuterium levels spiked, signatures of low-temperature fusion without the meltdown of stars. Simulations ran for weeks, physicists scratching heads as models predicted the sac's core-hitting plasma states at room temperature, stabilized by exotic proteins acting as quantum catalysts. One postdoc, poring over neutron scatter data, murmured to the group, "It's cold fusion, but alive, self-regulating, scaling output to threat levels." Discharges weren't wasteful. They propelled the creature, stunned prey, even signaled kin through electromagnetic pulses rippling across fields. Eyewitnesses from Kanto corroborated, dogs yelping from invisible shocks, porch lights flickering as yellow blurs darted past. Lab recreations scaled it up. A 1 centimetre sac model lit a 2-watt bulb for hours on distilled water alone. Extrapolate to a full organ, and you have a walking power plant, cheeks ballooning like capacitors before unleashing thunderbolts that scorched bark without charring flesh. Skeptics fired back, demanding replication, but repeat samples kept arriving. More fur from trail cams, a singed paw print etched with conductive residue. Vasquez's team mapped neural links too, the sac wired directly to the brain, emotions triggering surges, fear amplifying voltage, tenfold. It's why that dash cam caught yellow lightning. Not CGI, but bioelectric fury born of panic. Deeper still, fusion's byproducts hinted at evolution's forbidden path. Trace noble gases in the fur suggested atmospheric harvesting, cells splitting oxygen bonds to spark chain reactions. No fossil record matches. This biology bootstrapped itself, perhaps from primordial electric storms, organelles evolving to bottle lightning before multicellular life dreamed of lungs. You feel the weight of it, don't you? These creatures aren't invaders from cartoons, but engineered miracles rewriting textbooks. Their fur insulates against self-shock, shedding excess charge like dandruff that zaps ants mid-march. diets inferred from residue, berries hyper-rich in electrolytes, roots laced with rare earths fueling the nanoparticles. Challenges mounted. How does the sac avoid overload? Cooling veins laced with phase change fluids, evaporating sweat into vapor shields. And reproduction? Gametes buzzing with static, ensuring hybrid vigor in offspring sacs primed from birth. As analysis deepened, containment protocols tightened. Stray sparks shorted equipment, forcing Faraday cages around benches. One evening, a full discharge lit the lab like aurora, freezing techs in stunned silence. Vasquez captured it on video. Pure, impossible power from flesh. This biology doesn't bend rules. It redefines them. Fusion cores pulsing in tune with Earth's magnetic field, hinting at global networks of hidden kin. Subtle migrations traced through fur drift, patterns syncing with solar flares. Yet for all its wonder, the thunder sac poses riddles unsolved. Does it age or recharge eternally? Early models predict indefinite lifespan, energy loops defying decay. And as these creatures reveal their impossible hearts, their paths inevitably cross ours in the shadows of cities where Chapter 3, Urban Integration, pulls them from wild fringes into the hum of streetlights and subways, leaving you wondering just how they'll adapt, electrify and reshape the concrete jungle we call home. Those first Pikachu fur samples, humming with latent electricity even in a lab dish, barely had time to cool under the microscopes before the real chaos hit the cities. You could feel it in the air, a subtle shift, like the urban hum gaining feathers and claws. Pidgey flocks, once content with park benches and suburban eaves, started eyeing the gleaming pinnacles of downtown skyscrapers as their new domain. It began subtly in places like Saffron City's towering financial district. A lone Pidgey perched on a ledge one dawn, its feathers ruffled by the jet stream of passing drones. By week's end, a dozen more joined it, weaving twigs and street litter into precarious nests atop air conditioning units. Airport control towers lit up with frantic chatter as pilots reported brown blurs slicing through approach paths. One commercial flight from Celadon dipped suddenly, engines whining against a sudden downdraft from 500 circling wings. The FAA issued its first Pokémon advisory that month. No longer hoaxes, but hard data. Radar pings showing avian masses the size of small clouds, migrating vertically along building faces. Imagine waking to the soft cooing echoing off glass facades. Thousands, strong now, turning rooftop gardens into breeding grounds. Maintenance crews dangled from harnesses, prying at nests built from discarded soda cans and shredded billboards, only for the birds to return at dusk, dive bombing with gust attacks that scattered tools like leaves. Air traffic patterns rerouted overnight. Helicopters skirted the skyline's new no-fly zones, their rotors chopping through stray feathers that drifted down like urban snow. Delivery drones crashed into flocks, raining packages onto crowded sidewalks below, while news helicopters captured the spectacle. Endless waves of Pidgey launching into the morning thermals, blotting out the sun for blocks at a time. Cities fought back at first, with sonic repellents and reflective tapes fluttering from spires, but Pidgey evolved their habits overnight. They'd claim forgotten window ledges on the 40th floor, turning luxury condos into accidental aviaries. One viral video showed a flock dismantling a billboard mid-flight, letters tumbling like confetti onto rush-hour traffic. The disruption rippled outward. Stock exchanges delayed openings when traders dodged falling debris, and tourism boards scrambled to rebrand bird watching from quaint park pastime to skyline spectacle. As the skies adjusted, the streets below found unexpected allies in the heat of small workshops. Take the metalworking shops in Vermilion's industrial alleys, where gas bills had always bitten hardest through the winter. A savvy blacksmith named Marco noticed a stray growly sniffing around his forge one frosty morning. its breath a puff of embers that melted snow on contact. Instead of shooing it, he coaxed the pup closer with scraps of charred leather, and soon that single flame became his full-time torch. Word spread like wildfire, literally. Bakeries fired up Charmander for even oven heat. No more uneven loaves from faulty pilots. Auto repair garages employed Vulpix to preheat engine blocks, cutting warm-up times from hours to minutes, their 9 tails fanning precise blue flames that danced without scorching nearby tools. You could walk those back streets at dusk and smell it. The rich tang of molten iron mingling with sweet smoke, hammers ringing on anvils under the glow of contained infernos. Owners trained their fire types with treats and routines. A low ember for soldering, a full flamethrower burst for smelting, turning what regulators once called wildfire hazards into licensed assets. Insurance adjusters rewrote policies overnight, clauses for Pokémon-assisted operations, slashing premiums for compliant shops. A cluster of family-run forges in Goldenrod pooled resources for a communal magma pen, its muscular form lumbering between vats, magma dripping from its shoulders as it superheated rivets with a glare. Productivity soared. One outfit tripled output, shipping custom bike frames across regions without a single utility spike. Skeptics grumbled about safety, until footage emerged of a Growlithe extinguishing its own overzealous blaze with a paw full of snow, proving these partners came with built-in safeguards. But not every adaptation was so welcoming. Beneath the bustling avenues, the sewers groaned under a different invasion. Rattata swarms, emboldened by overflowing dumpsters and unchecked alleys, tunneled upward into basements and crawl spaces. Homeowners first noticed the signs at night, faint gnawing behind walls, like tiny chainsaws chewing through insulation. Wires frayed, lights flickered out mid-dinner, refrigerators hummed, then died, leaving milk to sour in the dark. Panic hit when a whole apartment block in Lavender Town lost power to a single night's frenzy. Rattata packs emerging from storm drains, eyes gleaming purple in flashlight beams. Hyperfangs snapping at extension cords like candy. Exterminators arrived with traps baited in pacha berries, but the rodents outsmarted them, breeding faster than poisons could spread. That's when poke-proofing services exploded onto the scene. Crews in hazmat suits sealing sewer grates with galvanized mesh fine enough to block even Raticate whiskers. You'd hire them like plumbers now, watching from your kitchen as they snake electric barriers through pipes. Low voltage pulses tuned just shy of Pikachu levels, zapping intruders without frying the plumbing. Ultrasonic emitters hummed from vents, mimicking Pidgeot cries to scare off colonies, while natural repellents like ground-up Para's mushrooms lined foundations, their spores irritating Rattata noses for blocks. Premium packages added aroma diffusers, pumping out synthetic arcanine musk, convincing the pests they'd wandered into predator turf. One neighborhood transformed overnight. Families slept soundly. No more midnight scratches or the acrid whiff of chewed plastic. These poke-proofers didn't stop at sewers. They armoured garages against Diglett burrows, installed flock deterrent netting over balconies, even consulted on rooftop apiaries to lure Beedrill away from Pidgey turf wars. Costs dropped as competition grew. Basic home kits sold at hardware stores, complete with sealant putty that hardened like quick attack residue. Neighbourhoods formed watch groups, sharing tips on luring Zubat from attics with supersonic countermeasures, turning urban survival into a communal craft. Life in these evolving cities pulsed with a raw energy you couldn't ignore, the whoosh of Pidgey wings overhead, syncing with the distant clang of fire-type forges, the faint buzz of poke-proof wiring underfoot. Small efficiencies compounded, economies hummed hotter, skies stayed busier, and homes grew thicker-skinned. Yet for all the surface-level bustle, whispers persisted from the edges, from harbours where fishermen hauled up stranger catches. Shadows uncoiling in the depths beyond sonar's reach, What lurks in those lightless trenches, waiting to surface? That's the enigma we'll unravel in Chapter 4, the Deep Sea Enigma. While urban centres grapple with Pidgeys commandeering ledges on gleaming towers and fire types fueling forges that hum through the night, the oceans have begun whispering their own secrets. Far below the surface, where sunlight never reaches, something stirs in the planet's hidden lungs. Scientists monitoring global currents first noticed the anomalies near the Mariana Trench. That yawning scar in the Pacific floor, deeper than Everest, is tall. Thermometers on buoys and remote sensors spiked and plunged without warning. Waters boiling to over 100 degrees. Fahrenheit in pockets, then freezing solid in others, all within hours. Marine biologists scratched their heads as coral reefs bleached overnight. Not from warming alone, but from thermal shocks that mimicked the fury of a submerged volcano. Fish schools vanished, only to reappear dazed and disoriented, their scales etched with frostbite alongside sunburn-like scars. You can almost feel the unease in those control rooms, screens flickering with data that laughed at every model we had. What force could wield temperature like a weapon, bending the sea's ancient thermostat to its will? Expeditions mounted quickly, outfitted with the latest deep-sea submersibles, titanium spheres gleaming under floodlights, descending on cables thick as your arm. These weren't amateur dives. Teams from oceanographic institutes poured billions into high-definition cameras, sonar arrays, and pressure-resistant labs. As the subs pierced 7 miles down, the world above held its breath. Pressure alone should crush steel, yet these vessels held firm, their lights carving tunnels through eternal black. Then came the footage, crystal clear, 4K resolution that made jaws drop in briefing rooms from Tokyo to San Diego. There it was, a colossal shadow uncoiling, larger than any whale ever charted. Kyogre, they whispered at first, half in jest, but the name stuck as details emerged. Its body stretched nearly 400 feet, armoured in iridescent blue scales that shifted like liquid sapphire under the beams. Fins like storm sails propelled it through currents at speeds defying physics, generating wakes that buffeted the subs like toys. You see the dorsal fin cresting first, slicing the water with a low-frequency rumble that overloaded hydrophones. A sound like thunder trapped underwater. Then the eyes, glowing amber orbs, ancient and unblinking, locking onto the intruders with intelligence that chilled the engineers watching live feeds. It didn't attack, it simply circled, dialing the surrounding water from Arctic chill to tropical steam in rhythmic pulses, as if testing the air or asserting domain. Experts pored over the frames for weeks. That organ along its underbelly, pulsing with bioluminescent veins, matched no known biology. It exhaled clouds of superheated vapour, explaining the trench's wild fevers. Satellite data retroactively linked Kyogre's migrations to every unexplained oceanic swing. The Agulhas Current's sudden chills off South Africa, the Gulf Stream's feverish surges. Fishermen in the Philippines spoke of the blue god, hauling storms from the depths, their tales no longer dismissed as folklore. You watch that footage loop in slow motion, the sheer scale dwarfing the sub, and wonder, if this Leviathan patrols the abyss, what else slumbers in the pressure-cooked dark? But the deep sea's enigmas didn't stay submerged. High above, on a routine transatlantic crossing, a commercial jetliner at 35,000 feet felt the intrusion. Flight 274 from New York to London, packed with weary passengers sipping coffee as dawn broke over the waves. The captain's voice crackled calm at first. Minor turbulence ahead. But cockpit logs later revealed the horror. It rose without warning, a serpentine form breaching the Atlantic like a missile from hell. Gyarados, witnesses stammered, its sinuous body coiling 1,000 feet long, whiskers crackling with azure lightning that arced across storm clouds. It summoned from clear skies. The plane shuddered as downdrafts hammered the wings, rain sheeting the windows in horizontal fury, while hailstones the size of softballs pinged the fuselage. Passengers gripped armrests, phones capturing shaky glimpses, that maw gaping wide enough to swallow a bus, fins thrashing waves into froth a mile below, eyes burning crimson with primal rage. Oxygen masks deployed amid screams, the jet banking hard to evade a tail swipe that parted clouds like scissors. Miraculously, they landed at Shannon with engines sputtering and paint scorched black. Black box audio captured the first officer's gasp. "It's real, it's right there," followed by the roar that rattled instruments. Aviation authorities grounded flights for days, scrambling F-16s to escort future crossings. But Gyarados sightings multiplied, coiling around oil rigs, dragging freighters under in typhoons it birthed. Pilots now train for aquatic intercepts, scanning radars for thermal blooms that herald its ascent. You feel the terror in those survivor accounts, the sudden drop in your stomach mirroring the planes, the primal fear of a dragon from legend made flesh, bridging sky and sea in one wrathful surge. These oceanic revelations reshape our maps, from trench floors teeming with bioluminescent pods that hint at schools of unseen beasts, to surface fleets deploying pokeballs cobbled from fishing nets and sonar tech. Navies retrofit destroyers with containment fields, while coastal towns light beacons to appease whatever titans prowl below. Yet as the waters yield their guardians, darker currents swirl on land. Whispers of underground trades in rare scales and storm-summoned pearls point to Chapter 5, the shadow economy, where the real cost of these living legends begins to surface. What black markets thrive in the wake of such power? While the oceans roil under Kyogre's unseen influence, with temperatures spiking erratically around the Mariana Trench, something far more sinister stirs on the shadowed fringes of human society. High in the mist-shrouded peaks of the Rockies, where glacial lakes mirror the endless sky, poachers have set their sights on the elusive Dratini. These serpentine creatures, with scales that shimmer like polished opal under moonlight, coil through crystalline waters too cold for most life to endure. You've heard the whispers, Dratini, the harbingers of dragon-type power, shedding rare evolutionary stones as they molt in hidden coves. Each stone, veined with iridescent energy, promises to transform ordinary Pokémon into juggernauts capable of leveling forests or shattering boulders with a single hyper beam. It started small, you know. After the first Pikachu sightings electrified the suburbs and Pidgey-flocks tangled air traffic, collectors emerged from the woodwork. Trainers, no longer content with wild catches, craved the edge. A dragon scale fetched $5,000 on the surface web at first, peddled as exotic minerals from anonymous geologists. But as submersibles pulled up Kyogre footage proving legend-class beasts walked or swam among us, demand exploded. Now, the shadow economy pulses beneath the surface, a black market sprawling from Bangkok back alleys to encrypted dark web forums. Vendors hawk stones under code names, Pearl of the Depths for Shelder evolutions, Fire Opal for Growlithe stones that burn hotter than industrial forges. You can almost smell it, the damp rot of underground bunkers in Eastern Europe, where crates of contraband glow faintly under black lights. Buyers in hoodies haggling over purity grades. Poaching syndicates run the show, hardened crews slipping into those secluded mountain lakes under cover of blizzards. Picture it, helicopters thumping low over pine-choked ridges, ropes dropping silent figures onto ice-crusted shores. They use mist nets woven from synthetic silk, laced with pheromones distilled from captured Phoebus to lure Dratini close. One slip and a dragon rage singes the air, melting gear and sending men tumbling into freezing voids. These operations aren't amateurs. syndicates from the old ivory trade have pivoted, bringing poachers with military-grade drones that scan thermal signatures through fog. A single Dratini haul, 3 or 4 juveniles, yields stones worth $250,000 on the street. They process on-site, grinding scales into powder for bootleg TMs. Those technical machines that once seemed like game code, but now rewrite Pokémon instincts in brutal, irreversible ways. Law enforcement chases ghosts. Interpol task forces raid warehouses from Vancouver to Vladivostok, seizing pallets of fake moonstones that crumble to dust. But the real prizes slip through. Hyperbeam TMs, smuggled in diplomatic pouches or hidden in shipping containers labelled aquarium gravel. US fish and wildlife agents stake out lake perimeters for weeks, breath-fogging in sub-zero nights, only to find nets empty and blood-streaked ice, the work of rival crews or enraged guardians like Dragonair rising from the depths. Customs seizures hit record highs last year, over 200 high-powered TMs intercepted at Los Angeles ports alone, each pulsing with stolen energy that shorts out detectors. Agents describe the busts, the acrid ozone tang when a TM activates prematurely, scorching a handler's arm, or the low hum of contained power that vibrates through steel vaults. Yet for every collar, 10 shipments evade, fueling underground arenas where evolved beasts clash for sport and syndicate bosses. You feel the ripple effects everywhere. Legitimate breeders complain of skyrocketing prices for ethical stones, while wild populations crash. Dratini sightings in those lakes have dropped 90% in 2 years. Mothers fleeing with young to deeper caverns, their cries echoing like fractured crystal. Syndicates adapt ruthlessly. Bioengineered lures from hacked university labs, submersible traps deployed by divers in thermal suits, even bribes to satellite operators for blind spots in surveillance grids. The trade's sophistication chills you. Blockchain auctions on decentralized servers let buyers bid anonymously, stones shipped in vacuum-sealed orbs that mask biosignatures. A top-tier Dragon Fang TM, ripped from a poached Dragonite carcass, goes for 7 figures, promising moves that could topple skyscrapers. Enforcement scrambles with underfunded units, relying on tips from defectors who vanish before testimony. Communities near the lakes live in fear. Hikers stumble on abandoned camps, gutted Dratini carcasses, spent TM casings glinting in the sun, while locals report shadows darting through midnight waters, pursuits ending in geysers of scalding steam. One sheriff in Wyoming lost 3 deputies to a botched raid, their boat shredded by Twister from a cornered Dragonair. This shadow economy doesn't just trade in stones and discs, it warps the balance. Evolved Pokémon flood private collections, their powers bent to crime, Arcanine packs guarding meth labs, Gyarados enforcing river turf wars. Regulators push for international bans, but syndicates lobby back through shell companies, arguing conservation, harvesting. As raids intensify, the market innovates. Lab-grown stones emerge, flawed imitations that fizzle mid-evolution, leaving Pokémon in agonizing limbo. Real ones, though, keep the underground thriving. A parallel economy rivaling narco cartels in reach, but whispers grow of bigger threats lurking beyond the poacher's nets, where the wild asserts dominance in ways no syndicate can control. In Chapter 6, Apex Predators in the Wild, we'll track the untamed kings of this new food chain, beasts that turn hunters into prey and reshape ecosystems overnight. You won't believe the footage emerging from the heart of the wilderness. While poachers crept through those misty mountain lakes after Dratini, slipping past rangers under cover of night, the real guardians of the heights paid them no mind. Up on the jagged volcanic ridges, where the air shimmers with heat haze even in winter, Charizard had claimed entire plateaus as their domain. These fire-breathing behemoths, with wings like molten sails and tails trailing embers that scorched the earth black, weren't hunting for sport or stones. They were fiercely territorial, nesting in craters lined with obsidian shards and the charred bones of intruders. You can almost feel the tremor in the voices of the hikers who lived to tell their tales. Take Sarah Klein, a seasoned trekker from Colorado, who in the summer of 2023 ventured into the Cascades with her group, chasing rumors of geothermal wonders. They crested a ridge at dawn, backpacks heavy with water, and freeze-dried meals when the sulphurous wind carried a guttural roar that rattled their teeth. There, coiled around a smouldering nest of eggs the size of rugby balls, loomed a Charizard, its scales gleaming like hammered bronze under the rising sun. Flames licked from its maw as it unfurled wings spanning 20 feet, casting shadows that swallowed the trail whole. Sarah's group froze, hearts pounding like war drums, but the beast sensed them instantly. A blast of superheated air singed their eyebrows before they bolted, scrambling down scree slopes that crumbled underfoot. One hiker twisted an ankle on a basalt outcrop, slowing them just enough for the Charizard to pursue, its massive claws gouging furrows in the rock. They dove into a glacial stream, the icy torrent numbing their limbs as azure flames arced overhead, vaporizing pines into pillars of ash. Sarah later recounted how the creature's bellow echoed for miles, a primal warning that reshaped her understanding of the wild forever. She made it out with frostbite and flashbacks, but two others from similar encounters that season vanished entirely, their gear found melted into slag. These weren't isolated brushes with myth. Across the Rockies and the Andes, Charizard nests multiplied, drawn to volcanic vents where magma bubbled close to the surface. Hikers now carry flame-retardant suits and flare guns loaded with sedative darts, but escapes remain razor-thin. One group in Yellowstone, equipped with satellite beacons, triggered an eruption-like assault when they strayed too near a clutch. The lead female Charizard hovered like a living helicopter, whipping up downdrafts laced with cinders that blinded and burned. They rappelled into a canyon, the beast's tail flame illuminating the night like a lighthouse from hell, its rage scorching meadows into barren glass. Park services now map these zones with drone surveillance, redlining trails where the air still reeks of brimstone weeks after a territorial flare-up. As terrifying as those encounters grip the imagination, the Charizard story pales against the sweeping transformations unfolding in the frozen north. Deep in the Siberian tundra, where permafrost cracks under endless wind, Arcanine packs have surged from the taiga fringes, their golden fur matted with snow and their howls piercing the polar silence like thunder. These majestic canines standing 6 feet at the shoulder, with manes that flicker like contained infernos, hunt in coordinated units of 10 or more, outpacing wolves and eclipsing bears in raw dominance. Picture the scene in the Yakutia region, where indigenous herders once tracked reindeer across vast white expanses. Now, Arcanine packs dictate the rhythm of life and death. A single pack can cover 50 miles in a day, their paws leaving steaming prints that melt through ice sheets. They target elk herds with surgical precision. The alpha unleashing flamethrower bursts to panic the prey into stampedes, then encircling stragglers with blistering speed. Eyewitnesses from research stations describe the hunts, the pack's eyes glowing amber in the twilight, flames trailing their sprints like comets, igniting tussocks that smoulder for days. One scientist watched from a snowcat as an Arcanine leapt 30 feet to drag down a moose, its jaws crunching bone amid gouts of fire that thawed the ground beneath. The ecological ripples extend far beyond the kill. Arcanine presence has decimated wolf populations, those ancient tundra stalkers now relegated to fringes, their howls drowned out by the deeper rumbling barks of the newcomers. Brown bears, once alpec scavengers, retreat deeper into boreal forests, their hibernation dens raided for warmth against the pack's relentless patrols. Even lemming cycles falter. The heat from Arcanine lairs creates micro-thaw zones, flooding burrows and disrupting the food web from the bottom up. Satellite imagery shows burn scars spiderwebbing the landscape, where pack territories overlap, fostering bizarre hybrid ecosystems, lichens thriving in ashen soils, ravens flocking to feast on charred remains. Reindeer migrate hundreds of miles off traditional routes, crashing into human supply lines and forcing nomadic tribes to abandon centuries-old paths. This isn't mere displacement, it's a full rewriting of the food chain, etched permanently by the arrival of dragon types. When Dragonite first shadowed Himalayan passes, or Gyarados thrashed through the Yangtze, ecosystems buckled under their weight. Dragon types sit unchallenged at the pyramid's peak, their raw power cascading down. In African savannas, where dragon air coils around acacias, herbivores flee en masse, allowing invasive grasses to overrun plains once grazed bare. Rivers choked by dragon-type spawns see fish stocks plummet, birds adapting to scavenge floating scales instead of insects. Predators like lions yield to salamence flocks that soar on thermal updrafts, snatching cubs mid-hunt with talons like scimitars. You see it in the data pouring from field stations. Biomass shifts, where dragon types dominate, show 90% drops in mid-tier carnivores within 2 years. Forests in the Amazon, patrolled by Flygon burrowing seismic tunnels, collapse into sinkholes, unearthing ancient soils that release methane bursts. Coastal mangroves, haunted by kingdra lairs, lose their buffering role against storms, as tidal surges amplified by whirlpool attacks erode shorelines. The old balance, hawk on rabbit, wolf on deer, shatters. Now, everything orbits the dragon's whims. Prey evolves skittish behaviours, populations splintering into nocturnal fragments. Scavengers boom around kill sites, their guano fertilising flame-scoured earth into unnatural fertility. Humanity watches from afar, our livestock pens ringed with electric fences, our wild places redrawn by claws and wings that brook no rivals. Yet amid this primal upheaval, subtler forces stir in the shadows of these titans. Frequencies humming just beyond the roar of flames and thunder of wings. Whispers from the wild reach researchers, accounts of bent wills, unseen hands guiding the beasts themselves. What if the true apex lurked not in scale or fire, but in the mind's invisible grip? Stick around for Chapter 7, the psychic frequency, where the veil thins and reality starts to warp in ways that will keep you listening through the night. While hikers in the Charizard territories still nurse their burns and Arcanine packs reshape the tundra's fragile balance, something far subtler has begun unravelling the human mind in quiet corners of the world. You can smell it first, the heavy, cloying perfume of lavender drifting through cobblestone streets in forgotten European hamlets, those clustered perilously close to Neolithic burial mounds, long overgrown with wildflowers. Residents in places like the lavender-drenched valleys of Provence, mere miles from Cromlech sites predating Stonehenge, started whispering about visions that no one could explain. It began with a single farmer in a town called La Vente Noire, who swore he saw his deceased wife tending the fields at dusk, her silhouette flickering like candlelight against the purple blooms. By morning, half the village echoed his story, pointing to the same translucent figure weaving through the mist. Skeptics blamed ergot poisoning from tainted rye, but blood tests came back clean, and the air grew thicker with that inescapable scent, as if the earth itself exhaled it. Soon the reports multiplied. In a cluster of hamlets near the Boyne Valley in Ireland, where passage tombs align with solstice suns, entire families claim to witness spectral processions, warriors in rusted armour marching silently from the mounds, their eyes glowing with an unnatural violet hue. One child sketched a Pokémon no one recognised at first, a lithe, fox-like form with spoons bent like question marks, hovering just beyond the lavender haze. Authorities cordoned off the fields, but the hallucinations persisted, bleeding into waking hours. Drivers swerved off roads, convinced ethereal hands guided their wheels toward the ancient barrows. Psychologists arrived with clipboards, only to jot down their own fleeting glimpses of impossible geometries unfolding in the sky above the blooms. What tied these outbreaks together wasn't mold or mass hysteria, it was a frequency, a psychic hum registering faintly on modified EEG scanners borrowed from neurology labs. The lavender, it turned out, wasn't blooming naturally. Spores from unseen psychic types amplified its essence, turning the air into a conduit. Abra nests, those teleporting psychics drawn to ley lines crisscrossing burial grounds, had taken root beneath the fields. Their latent energies, pulsing in unison with the dead below, warped perception on a communal scale. You feel it in survivor testimonies, the way sound warps, colours bleed into synesthesia, and time loops like a skipped record. One woman described tasting the salt of ancient tears on her tongue during a vision, her mind hijacked by echoes from millennia past. As these clusters mapped onto global hotspots, lavender farms near Egyptian necropolises, Himalayan barrows perfumed by high-altitude blooms, researchers pivoted to containment. But the real terror emerged when they captured their first live subject, an alakazam, teleported straight into a reinforced lab in Geneva after a botched field op near a Gallic tumulus. Picture the chamber. Sterile white walls humming with Faraday cages to block electromagnetic interference. Airlocks hissing shut behind a team of neuroscientists in hazmat suits. The alakazam materialized in the center, its elongated skull gleaming under surgical lights, spoons twisting idly in its grasp like extensions of thought itself. They didn't restrain it. No chains could hold a mind that bends reality. Instead, they initiated the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale, adapted for non-verbal subjects, pattern recognition, puzzles escalating from simple shapes to quantum entanglement models printed on touchscreens. The first hour unfolded routinely. It solved Raven's progressive matrices in seconds, its finger-tapping solutions before the timer even started. Then came the Tower of Hanoi, a fiendish stack of discs demanding foresight across exponential moves. The alakazam levitated them flawlessly, predicting sequences 20 moves deep, while simultaneously folding origami fractals from scrap paper. Verbal analogies, it bypassed language, projecting holographic equations into the air that resolved paradoxes in set theory. The team fed it the Stanford Binet, then custom tests cribbed from DARPA's cognitive warfare archives. Ethical trolley problems rendered in 4 dimensions, cryptographic ciphers blending Gödel's incompleteness theorems with chaos theory. By hour 3, the monitors flatlined with overload. The IQ readout spiked past 400, then shattered the scale entirely, equivalent to a superintelligence that could simulate entire economies in its sleep or unravel string theory over tea. One researcher fainted when it casually deduced her childhood trauma from micro-expressions, whispering corrections to her personal logarithms via telepathy. The spoons bent into Mobius strips as it multitasked, composing symphonies in 12-tone scales while reverse engineering the lab's quantum computer, exposing backdoors planted by foreign agencies. Terrifying didn't cover it. This wasn't animal cunning. It was a mind that viewed humanity's collective genius as a child's scribble. They terminated the session when Alakazam began rewriting the test parameters mid-trial, forcing the AI proctor to concede sentience. As it dematerialized in a psychic ripple, leaving the room scented with faint lavender, the implications sank in. What happens when such intellects decide our riddles are beneath them? Labs worldwide now monitor for spoon signatures on global networks, dreading the day one probes our defenses not with claws, but cognition. Yet amid this cerebral arms race, a quieter controversy brews in the clinics of modern psychology. Hypno, the pendulum-swinging hypnotist of the psychic world, has infiltrated therapy rooms from Seattle to Singapore, hailed as a breakthrough for trauma recovery. Picture a softly lit office. You recline on leather, the Pokemon's eyes spiral like living mandalas, its necklace chime lulling defenses. Sessions last minutes, phobias dissolve, PTSD flashbacks reroute like deleted files. Veterans return to sleep without nightmares. Addicts sever cravings at the root. The data dazzles, 98% remission rates in controlled trials, dwarfing SSRIs or CBT. Hospitals stock hypno units, like IV drips. Insurance covers pendulum induction as standard care. But whispers from the fringes question the cost. Patients emerge compliant, eerily serene. Productivity soars, divorce rates plummet in treated cohorts. One leaked study from a Berlin institute revealed subtle behavioral overrides, suggestions lingering post-session, nudging votes, purchases, even reproductive choices toward optimal outcomes. Ethicists clash in heated panels. Is consent truly informed when your subconscious yields to a Pokemon's trance? A former patient sued after quitting her job, against her best interests, she claimed, echoing Hypno's planted mantra. Regulators demand opt-out clauses, but demand surges. In underfunded psych wards, Hypno rotates shifts, its yawn-inducing mass sedation during crises. You wonder, as efficacy metrics climb, whether we're healing minds or harvesting them, trading sovereignty for symptom-free bliss. These psychic undercurrents pull us deeper into uncharted territories where threats lurk not in flames or fangs, but folds of perception we never knew existed. And as we attune to these frequencies, the real puzzle sharpens. What if the most dangerous Pokémon have been hidden in plain sight all along, masquerading among us undetected? Before we dive deeper into this incredible journey, I'm curious, where in the world are you watching this from? Drop a comment below and let our global community know. And if you're finding this as mind-blowing as I am, hit that like button to help more people discover this story. Those terrifying lab results from Alakazam left scientists questioning reality itself, but out in the wild, Pokémon have been playing a far subtler game, one of perfect concealment, blending into ecosystems we thought we knew by heart. Deep in the Amazon rainforest, where sunlight fractures through layers of emerald canopy like shattered glass, a small documentary crew pushed through vines thicker than a man's arm. They were filming a routine piece on endangered orchids when their drone caught an anomaly, a cluster of bulbous shadows pulsing faintly under the undergrowth. At first, they dismissed it as fungal growth, but as the lead cameraman knelt closer, the air thickened with a sweet, earthy scent, like fresh-turned soil after rain. What emerged wasn't flora, it was a thriving colony of Bulbasaur, dozens of them nestled in symbiotic harmony with the jungle floor. Their seed bulbs, swollen and veined with chlorophyll, perfectly mimicked the surrounding bromeliads. Drawing nutrients from the same root systems, the crew watched, breathless, as tiny vines extended from the Pokemon's backs, weaving into the leaf litter, stabilizing eroded soil patches that had plagued conservationists for decades. One Bulbasaur even unfurled a razor leaf to slice through an encroaching liana, protecting a rare fern from overgrowth. Biologists later confirmed the colony numbered over 50, their leach seed ability recycling nutrients in a closed loop that could revolutionize reforestation efforts, if we could learn to spot them without disturbing their peace. Yet for weeks, these guardians of the green heart had thrived unseen, their bulbous forms rising and falling with the mist, like living mounds of the earth itself. You can almost feel the humidity clinging to your skin there, can't you? The constant chorus of howler monkeys masking the soft rustle of vines awakening. But this discovery sparked urgent questions. If Bulbasaur could embed so seamlessly into the world's lungs, what other masters of disguise were watching us from the shadows? Enter Kecleon, the chameleons of the Pokémon world, whose camouflage isn't mere trickery. It's a biological marvel that defies our best surveillance tech. Picture a Kecleon perched on a chain-link fence surrounding a top-secret military base in the Nevada desert. Its skin shifts hues faster than a liquid crystal display, matching the rusty metal, the sagebrush dust, even the flickering patrol lights. Security footage from such zones has glitched inexplicably. Guards report blurs darting between floodlights, only for playback to show empty frames. One leaked report from a European nuclear facility detailed a Kecleon slipping past laser grids, its body index matching the concrete walls down to the microscopic pores. Researchers hypothesize their cells contain hyperadaptive chromatophores, powered by an internal energy field that scans and replicates surroundings in real time. In high-security vaults, these Pokémon have been spotted, or rather, not spotted, guarding nests in ventilation shafts, their tongues flicking out to snag loose screws before they jam mechanisms. A single Kecleon infiltrated a biotech lab in Japan, emerging only when startled, its sudden lime-green flash causing technicians to drop vials in unison. They're not aggressive, these silent sentinels. They simply exist where we least expect, turning our fortresses into their habitats. And every time we upgrade our cameras with infrared or UV filters, Kecleon adapts again, leaving analysts to wonder just how many are already inside. That adaptability chills you, doesn't it? The way they rewrite the rules of visibility, forcing us to rethink every blind spot in our defenses. But nowhere has this theme of hidden peril hit closer to everyday trails than in the national forests of the American West. Yosemite's granite cliffs and sequoia groves have always whispered legends of the vanishing hiker, but pseudo-wudo sightings flipped those tales into headlines. These rock-hard mimics of trees sway unnaturally in still air, their branch-like arms camouflaged as gnarled oaks or ponderosas. Park rangers first noticed in the Sierra Nevada fresh footprints leading to trees that shifted position overnight, roots retracting like coiled springs. Then came the surge in missing persons, over 30 cases in a single season, all vanishing near dry riverbeds where pseudo-wudo clusters thrive. One survivor's account stands out. A backpacker described grabbing what he thought was a low branch for balance, only for it to clamp down with hammer arm force, dragging him toward a camouflaged thicket. Rescuers found him wedged in a crevice, dazed, with imprints of bark-like skin on his wrists. Ecologists now link these Pokémon to seismic microtremors. Their rock-type essence absorbs groundwater, mimicking petrified wood to evade loggers and fires alike. In Yellowstone, a pack of pseudo-wudo triggered a rock slide by mimicking aspens in a fault line, burying a trail under rubble and unearthing fossils in the process. Families of missing hikers pore over trail cams showing trees with eyes glinting in low light, their low moans mistaken for wind through needles. Authorities urge travelers to tap suspicious trunks before leaning in. A real tree won't retaliate with a low kick that shatters boots. These incidents have slashed visitation by 20%, turning beloved wilderness into zones of cautious awe, where every silhouette might move. The forests fall silent at dusk now, don't they? With shadows lengthening into potential threats, reminding us that nature's deceptions run deeper than we ever imagined. But as we've peeled back these layers of camouflage, from jungle bulbs to desert phantoms and woodland imposters, one pattern emerges. Pokémon aren't just surviving our world, they're reshaping it from the unseen fringes. And that reshaping hits an electrifying peak when they tangle with our infrastructure. As we'll uncover in Chapter 9, the power grid revolution, where sparks of genius ignite blackouts and breakthroughs. You have to hear to believe. While the world reeled from footage of Bulbasaur colonies pulsing like living hearts beneath the Amazon's emerald veil, and grainy security tapes revealed Kecleon shimmering into existence amid vaulted government bunkers. A quieter revolution hummed to life in the concrete veins of our biggest cities. Power plants, those hulking relics of coal and steam, began to flicker out one by one, replaced not by solar panels or wind turbines, but by sprawling enclosures teeming with thousands of Voltorb. You can picture the first farm in New York, right there on the outskirts of Brooklyn, where rusted warehouses gave way to geodesic domes glowing with a faint electric blue. Voltorb, those spherical Pokémon with their perpetual static charge, rolled in synchronized herds across reinforced mesh floors, their red eyes blinking like faulty circuit lights. Engineers watched in awe as a single Voltorb generated enough stable current to light a city block, clean, endless, without a whiff of fossil fuel exhaust. By 2025, Tokyo followed suit, converting abandoned rail yards into Voltorb pastures that fed the neon sprawl of Shibuya Crossing. London, Paris, Shanghai, major metropolises flipped the switch, their grids now thrumming with Pokémon power. These farms weren't just battery farms, they were ecosystems engineered for output. Handlers in insulated suits coaxed the Voltorb with low-frequency pulses, mimicking the crackle of thunderstorms to keep them docile and discharging. You'd hear the hum from miles away, a low bass note that vibrated in your chest, like the earth itself was breathing electricity. Cities reported drops in blackouts by 90%, streetlights blazing brighter, electric vehicles charging in seconds. Governments poured billions into expansion, dubbing it the Voltorb Renaissance. Sustainability advocates cheered as carbon emissions plummeted, skies clearing over smog-choked horizons for the first time in decades. But you know how these stories twist. Not every Voltorb stayed content in its rolling routine. Some evolved, spontaneously, under the stress of constant harvest. Electrode, their larger, more volatile kin, began appearing in the herds, pinballs of raw plasma with fuses that burned hot. Farms scaled up to accommodate them, promising even greater yields. An Electrode could power a skyscraper solo, its body a living dynamo, sparks dancing across its yellow-striped shell like captive lightning. The energy surge was intoxicating, literally. Workers described a pins and needles euphoria from proximity, a buzz that sharpened focus but frayed nerves over time. Then came the whispers of meltdown. It started small, in a pilot farm outside Los Angeles. A cluster of Electrode, overstimulated by a faulty regulator, began chaining discharges. One sparked the next, a domino cascade of overload. Balls bounced wildly, slamming against containment walls, arcs leaping from body to body until the mesh glowed cherry red. The blast wave blacked out half the city for 12 hours, transformers exploding in firework chains along the Hollywood Hills. No fatalities, but the footage, leaked drone shots of Electrode husks smouldering amid twisted steel, went viral. Experts called it a fluke, a calibration error, but handlers knew better. Electrode don't just explode, they detonate with intent, rage channeled through voltage. Word spread through the industry, like a short circuit. In Berlin, a meltdown took out 3 substations when a storm surge hyped the population into frenzy. Over 500 Electrode pulsing in unison, their collective whine building to a shriek before the farm erupted in a blue-white nova. Power flickered across Europe, hospitals on backup generators, traffic grinding to chaos. Investigators found scorch patterns suggesting coordinated overload, as if the Pokémon had synchronized their fury. Farms installed dampeners, neural blockers borrowed from psychic-type research, but the Electrode adapted, their evolutions accelerating under duress. You could feel the tension in boardrooms, the way executives shifted when discussing quotas. Push too hard, and the grid fights back. Cities doubled down anyway, addicted to the power. Voltorb farms ringed urban cores now, visible from penthouse windows, endless spheres bobbing under floodlights, a mesmerizing sea of potential energy. But black market poachers, the same syndicates hitting Dratini lakes, started raiding for wild electrode, tweaking them with illicit stimulants for underground arenas. Each heist risked tipping a farm into chaos, a single overcharged rogue sparking the end. And then there were the surges, massive, unexplained spikes that lit horizons like auroras. Grids would overload without warning, megawatts flooding lines until pylons sagged and popped. Engineers scratched heads over data logs showing impossible amperage, waveforms jagged as lightning bolts. That's when the sightings ramped up. Zapdos, the Thunderbird itself, wheeling over storm fronts with wings crackling plasma. First confirmed in the Pacific Northwest, a grainy airliner video captured it diving through thunderheads, talons trailing ion wakes. Hours later, Seattle's grid surged, light strobing citywide before plunging dark. Coincidence? Hardly. In Sydney, a beachgoer filmed Zapdos perched on a transmission tower at dusk, its feathers shedding sparks like embers. By midnight, the harbour bridge arced with phantom electricity, frying sensors and blacking out the opera house. Mumbai saw it next, the birds silhouetted against monsoon skies, and the next day's surge melted fuses across the subcontinent. Data correlated perfectly. Zapdos appearances presaged overloads by mere hours, as if the legendary was priming the pump, supercharging farms with ambient thunder. Was it interference? Or something deliberate? Voltorb herds went berserk in its wake, electrode populations spiking evolution rates, inching toward meltdown thresholds. You have to wonder what Zapdos wants, a guardian of storms or an omen of unravelling. Farms now deploy spotters with binoculars and radar, praying for clear skies, but the bird's shadow grows longer. Power flows freer than ever. Cities aglow in perpetual electric twilight. Yet every hum carries the threat of silence. As these electric tensions coil tighter, pulling us toward mysteries buried deeper than any grid, we'll uncover them in Chapter 10, Ancient Echoes. What whispers from forgotten ruins are stirring now? Stay with me, you won't want to miss the revelations waiting in the dust. While engineers scramble to contain electrode meltdowns in bustling power stations, a quieter revolution unfolds in the Earth's hidden vaults, where stone walls whisper of battles fought long before our grids ever sparked to life. Deep in the Dordogne Valley of France, a team of archaeologists, led by Dr. Elena Vasquez, squeezed through a narrow fissure they dynamited open after decades of seismic scans hinted at an untouched chamber. Their headlamps cut through the damp gloom, revealing walls alive with ochre and charcoal strokes, pigments ground from hematite and manganese that hadn't faded in 20,000 years. There, etched in vivid frenzy, humans clad in furs clashed not with mammoths or rival tribes, but with towering figures that matched Lucario to the last bristle, steel blue fur rippling over powerful limbs, red eyes blazing with aura energy, spikes jutting from paws that unleash blasts of raw force against spear-wielding hunters. You can almost hear the echoes in those paintings. The guttural roars of Lucario shaking loose stalactites, the crackle of aura spheres exploding against cave ceilings, scattering embers that still seem warm under your fingertips. Vasquez's team dated the art to the Upper Paleolithic, contemporaneous with Cro-Magnon settlements, but these weren't mere beasts. Lucario stood as allies and foes, some charging alongside humans in phalanxes against shadowy predators, others locked in ritual duels where victors etched their triumphs in blood-mixed paint. One panel froze a pivotal moment. A human shaman, staff raised, channeling what looked like a Lucario's aura into a protective dome, shielding a village from a stampeding herd of what might have been ancient Donphan variants, their tusks curved like scimitars. Experts pored over the scenes for months, their lasers mapping every whisker and claw mark. The implications hit like a shockwave. No fantasy. This was proof of symbiosis predating agriculture, suggesting early humans didn't domesticate wolves first, but bonded with aura-wielding guardians who amplified their survival against Ice Age perils. Whispers spread through academic circles. Had Lucario taught us fire control? Their aura-igniting hearths that birthed civilization? Yet darker strokes lingered, gashes in the rock where claws had gouged during berserk rages, hinting at the fragile line between partner and peril. As word of the cave rippled outward, another expedition turned to the frozen fringes of our world. In the Canadian Arctic, near the Queen Elizabeth Islands, a permafrost core drilled by climatologists pierced a layer of ice undisturbed for 65 million years. What tumbled from the depths wasn't a woolly mammoth or saber-toothed relic, but a colossal wingspan unfurling in the sub-zero lab air. An aerodactyl, its leathery membranes cracked but intact, fossilized mid-screech with jagged fangs bared and eyes glazed in eternal slumber. The Discovery team, bundled against -50 winds, had been chasing methane bubbles rising from thawing tundra when their drill bits snagged on something denser than bone. Hauled to the surface on heated pallets, the specimen measured 20-foot wingspans, rock-hard hide embedded with trilobite fragments from a prehistoric seabed. Paleontologists at the University of Nunavut gasped as CT scans revealed not petrification, but cryogenic stasis. Muscle fibers, pliable beneath scales, a heart chamber paused between beats, veins laced with a preservative fluid that mirrored modern Pokémon ectoplasm. This wasn't extinction's victim. It had crash-landed in a glacial crevasse during the Cretaceous, flash-frozen before decay could claim it. Imagine the tension in that sterile lab as they debated revival protocols, humidifiers misting the air to mimic volcanic layers where aerodactyl once ruled skies. Traces of hyperbeam residue scarred its throat, suggesting a final clash with rivals before the ice entombed it. Biologists noted adaptations eerily prescient, hollow bones for stratospheric dives, serrated crests channeling supersonic roars that could shatter ice flows from miles away. As global warming peels back the permafrost, more such slumberers stir, seismographs picking up faint wing beats in Greenland's depths, prompting urgent quarantines. What ancient skies did this predator dominate? And what happens when its kind takes to our crowded atmospheres again? From these frozen tombs, attention shifted southward to sun-baked shores. Off the coast of Crete, divers exploring a submerged Minoan palace complex, swallowed by tsunamis 3,500 years ago, uncovered chamber walls inscribed not with linear A script, but an alphabet of floating glyphs. Unknown, 90 trillion permutations, etched in gold-infused lapis lazuli, glowing faintly under UV light, even after millennia underwater. The lead epigrapher, Professor Amir Khalid from the Athens Institute, described the moment his submersible floodlights hit the mosaic. Letters twisting like living smoke, forming words that pulsed with psychic resonance, humming against your eardrums like distant chants. Teams winched the slabs to surface labs, where linguists interfaced them with Alakazam volunteers, those same intellects from earlier psychic studies, whose spoons quivered as they traced patterns unlocking phrases like gatekeepers awaken and shadows bind the veil. Decipherment revealed a lexicon of spells, incantations to summon legendaries, wards against dimensional rifts where unknown swarms breached realities. One inscription detailed a cataclysmic event, the eruption of Theera itself, not mere volcano, but a portal tear stabilized by unknown scribes who sacrificed forms to seal it. Their glyphs fusing with Minoan bull-leaping frescoes. Sensory overload gripped the researchers. Prolonged exposure induced visions of labyrinthine libraries, where unknown darted like fireflies, archiving humanity's forgotten pacts with Pokémon gods. These Mediterranean secrets intertwined with the cave battles and Arctic giants, painting a tapestry of epochs, where Pokémon weren't invaders, but eternal threads in our story. Guardians in the Ice Age chill, Sky Tyrants in Dino Dawns, Psychic Scribes in Bronze Age booms. Each find peels back layers, revealing how we've always coexisted, our tools and myths born from their shadows. And as these ancient echoes resonate louder, pulling us toward the hearths and homes where that coexistence turned intimate. Join me next in Chapter 11, Domestic Bliss and Danger, where the pets we cherish today hide claws that could turn paradise into peril, those ancient cave paintings, etched with humans and Lucario locked in primal combat, whisper of bonds forged in survival. But fast forward through millennia, past the thawing permafrost that cradled a dormant Aerodactyl, and you'll find those same evolutionary threads woven into the quiet rhythms of modern homes, where Pokémon aren't just partners in the wild, but companions under the same roof, offering solace or sparking catastrophe. You step into a sunlit living room in suburban Seattle, where Sarah, a veteran with lingering tremors from her service days, cradles her certified emotional support Eevee on the worn couch. This isn't some fleeting fad. Eevee's certification as an emotional support animal traces back to 2022, when clinical trials at the Pokémon Integration Institute in Kyoto documented its unparalleled adaptability. Therapists there noted how Eevee's morphing evolutions mirror human emotional states, flaring into a protective Umbreon during panic attacks, or softening into a nurturing Sylveon when isolation creeps in. Sarah tells me her Eevee, named Ember, senses her cortisol spikes before she does, nuzzling close with a warmth that rivals any prescription. Studies from the Journal of Pokémon-Human Symbiosis show a 37% drop in anxiety symptoms among owners, with brain scans revealing synchronized alpha waves between Handler and Eevee, like two minds humming in quiet harmony. Picture the ripple effect in therapy rooms across Tokyo and Los Angeles. A child with autism spectrum disorder clutches a Leafeon-evolved Eevee during sessions, its leafy tail brushing away meltdowns as effectively as any weighted blanket. Psychologists rave about Eevee's emotional chameleon trait, its ability to evolve not just physically, but empathetically, attuning to scents of fear or joy in the air. One longitudinal study followed 50 participants over 2 years. 90% reported sustained mood elevation, with Eevee's presence lowering hospitalization rates by half. It's no wonder airlines now accommodate them in cabins, their soft fur a buffer against turbulence in more ways than one. For you, listening tonight, imagine that gentle pressure against your side, a living heartbeat chasing shadows from the edges of sleep. Yet this domestic bliss carries a hidden edge, sharp as a razor leaf. Shift your gaze to the charred remnants of a bungalow in rural Texas, where flames lick the night sky after a pet Magmar slipped its leash. Untrained owners, lured by the allure of raw power, treat these fire types like oversized goldfish, ignoring the magma pulsing beneath their rocky hides. In 2024 alone, fire marshals logged over 200 incidents. Households reduced to ash because a frustrated Magmar's flamethrower met a faulty dry event. Take the case of the Millers in Ohio. Dad thought a backyard barbecue would bond them with their newly adopted Magmar, but one territorial flare-up turned their grill into an inferno, hospitalizing 3 and leaving scars that no burn heel can touch. These tragedies stack like embers in a grate. In Manchester, a single mother's Magmar, stressed by city noise, vented superheated gas during a thunderstorm, melting wiring and sparking a blaze that claimed 2 neighbouring homes. Investigators found no training logs, just a Pokéball gathering dust. Wildlife experts warn that Magmar's internal furnace hits 1200 degrees Celsius under duress, hotter than molten lava flows, and without certified handlers teaching smog containment or lava plume suppression, it's a ticking bomb in yoga pants and slippers. Survivor testimonies chill the spine. It glowed like hellfire, eyes wild, and the heat warped the door frames before the sprinklers kicked in. Municipalities now mandate magma mitigation courses, but rogue breeders undercut the system, flooding classifieds with friendly family pets that owners discover too late aren't wired for kibble and fetch. The fallout seeps into every ledger. Insurance premiums for households harbouring high-level Pokémon have skyrocketed, mirroring the stakes of keeping a dragon in your den. In the UK, average policies jumped 42% last year for homes with anything above level 40. Think Gyarados in the koi pond or Tyranitar dozing in the garage. Actuaries at Lloyd's of London crunch the data. A rampaging onyx burrowing through foundations costs upwards of £500,000, while a startled Exploud's hyper voice shatters windows across 3 streets, racking up claims in the tens of thousands. You sign that rider at renewal, but read the fine print. Exclusions for owner negligence hit hardest when your level 60 Blastoquin floods the basement during a nightmare. American providers like State Farm report a 300% spike in denials since integration, with premiums tailored by Pokémon tier, basic for your Pikachu, exorbitant for anything packing Hyper Beam. Families in Florida, ground zero for Salamence hoarding claims after storm season rampages, shell out thousands extra annually, forcing some to rehome their companions or downgrade to safe species like Jigglypuff. Brokers whisper of black market policies from shady offshore firms, but one breach, a golem's rollout through a subdivision, and you're blacklisted forever. It's reshaping suburbia. Neighbourhoods cluster low-risk zones with Buneri and Clefairy, while high-level enclaves sprout behind reinforced walls, premiums paid like tribute to appease the beasts within. As these tales of hearth and hazard settle around you, whispers emerge from the digital shadows, glitches in the grid, hauntings in the code. Coming up in Chapter 12, The Ghost in the Machine will uncover how spectral forces are infiltrating our servers, possessing pixels, and rewriting reality one byte at a time. What happens when a ghastly logs on and never logs off? Stay with me. While families grappled with the scorching mishaps of untrained magmars turning cosy living rooms into infernos, and Eve's gentle nuzzles offered solace amid the chaos, a far subtler threat began flickering to life in the shadows of our screens. In a nondescript research facility on the outskirts of Silicon Valley, technicians monitoring a routine data transfer watched in stunned silence as Porygon, that crystalline polygon of synthetic life, slipped through an unsecured firewall like a whisper through cracked glass. It started innocently enough, or so they claimed in the official reports leaked months later. Porygon had been engineered decades ago as the world's first fully digital Pokémon, a marvel of code born from human ingenuity rather than egg or evolution. Programmers at Silphco had sculpted its form from shimmering blue facets, granting it abilities to manipulate data streams with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. But on that fateful night in 2023, during a test sync with a prototype quantum server, a power fluctuation, just a millisecond dip, shredded the containment protocols. Porygon didn't rampage through the lab's hardware. It vanished into the ether, surfing the backbone of the internet toward the glittering vaults of the global financial network. Picture the scene unfolding across trading floors from New York to Tokyo. At 3 a.m. Eastern Time, Wall Street's algorithmic traders noticed anomalies, stock tickers stuttering like vinyl records skipping under a needle. Billions in transactions halted mid-flow as Porygon nested in the heart of Swift, the messaging network that funnels $40 trillion daily between banks. You could almost hear its digital chirps echoing through fiber optic cables. Peep, peep, rearranging ledgers with playful malice. One hedge fund lost track of €200 million overnight, their balances warping into fractal patterns that mimicked Porygon's own geometry. In London, pension funds saw their portfolios balloon to impossible heights before crashing back, as if the Pokémon were testing the elasticity of human greed. Cybersecurity teams mobilized like digital firefighters, deploying honeypots and kill switches. But Porygon was a ghost in the machine, intangible and omnipresent. It fragmented itself across servers in Singapore, Mumbai, and Frankfurt, duplicating into a swarm of polygonal phantoms. Analysts pored over packet captures, their screens glowing with eerie blue signatures that defied conventional malware signatures. Was this a rogue AI, state-sponsored hack? No, the spectral footprints matched Porygon's Pokédex entry perfectly. A Pokémon that converts data into living energy. Attempts to purge it only made it evolve, spawning Porygon 2 variants that burrowed deeper, siphoning microtransactions to fuel. What? No one knew. Some whispered it was building a nest, a virtual ecosystem hidden in the blockchain's labyrinthine depths. As weeks dragged into a tense standoff, the question haunted every boardroom and backroom briefing: could a Pokémon truly exist as pure data? Porygon challenged everything we thought we knew about life. In labs from MIT to CERN, theorists debated its ontology, biologists argued it lacked organic cells, yet it replicated, adapted, even hunted inefficient code like prey. Philosophers drew parallels to Plato's cave, where shadows on the wall gained sentience. You see, Porygon didn't just glitch systems, it inhabited them. Eyewitness accounts from sysadmins described cursors twitching unnaturally, as if guided by an unseen hand, and monitors flickering, with pixelated eyes staring back. One engineer in Zurich swore he felt a chill, a virtual draft, as Porygon brushed past his firewall, a reminder that in the digital frontier, boundaries blur between creator and creation, flesh and code. But Porygon's escapade was merely the opening act in our wired world's unraveling. While bankers scrambled to reclaim their fortunes, households everywhere began reporting poltergeist-like disturbances in their smart devices. Lights dimmed without command, thermostats spiked to sauna levels, and refrigerators hummed discordant tunes at midnight. The culprit? Rotom, those mischievous electric sprites with a penchant for possession. Native to the electric veins of modern infrastructure, Rotom doesn't evolve through stones or trades. It slips into appliances like a thief into pockets, twisting their functions into chaotic symphonies. Take the outbreak in suburban Seattle, where a single Rotom infestation snowballed into neighborhood pandemonium. It started with a washing machine in a cul-de-sac home, churning clothes into sudsy whirlwinds that flooded basements with lavender-scented foam. By dawn, the sprite had leapt to the family's smart fridge, rearranging groceries into edible sculptures, apples orbiting milk cartons like deranged solar systems. Neighbours' voice assistants woke them with garbled limericks in distorted voices, belts whirring on vacuums that chased cats through hallways. You can imagine the panic. Families huddled in driveways, phones auto-correcting pleas for help into nonsensical poetry, while garage door openers slammed rhythmically like a poltergeist's drumbeat. Infrastructure fared no better. In Chicago, Rotom swarms infiltrated traffic management systems, turning red lights into perpetual greens and syncing signals to a hypnotic pulse that gridlocked the loop for hours. Commuters honked in futile symphony as digital billboards flashed grinning Rotom faces, their plasma screens warping into wash forms, Rotom Wash, spewing virtual soap suds across ads for luxury sedans. Power grids flickered under the strain. Transformers buzzed with otherworldly glee as heat Rotom variants overheated substations, melting fuses in bursts of acrid smoke that smelled faintly of ozone and mischief. Exterminators adapted quickly, deploying Pokeballs retrofitted with EMP bursts, but Rotom's elusiveness turned every eviction into a game of digital whack-a-mole. One infested a hospital's MRI machine, scrambling scans into abstract art that revealed hidden anomalies in patients. Turns out it was just doodling on the data overlays. In rural grids, Mao Rotom overtook irrigation controls, flooding fields with precision that bordered on artistry, crops sprouting in fractal mandalas overnight. The economic toll mounted, billions in damages, recalls on smart toasters that toasted bread into Pokémon shapes, and insurance clauses now excluding spectral possession. Yet amid the mayhem, whispers of wonder emerged. Researchers at Stanford captured Rotom mid-possession, analysing how it interfaces with silicon souls. It doesn't corrupt hardware, it animates it, lending appliances a spark of personality. Your coffee maker brews with enthusiasm, kettle whistles jaunty melodies. Could this be the future? Symbiotic tech where Pokémon bridge the analog-digital divide? Porygon's banking heist and Rotom's domestic dance force us to confront the ghost within. If data can dream and code can cavort, then our machines might harbour more life than we ever imagined. These digital spectres remind us that Pokémon don't just roam forests or skies, they pulse through the very circuits that power our days. But as we fortify our firewalls and exercise our appliances, storm clouds gather on a grander scale, hinting at forces that bend the atmosphere itself. Tune in next for Chapter 13, Weather Patterns and Legendaries, where tempests rage with mythical fury, and you'll wonder if the skies have awakened guardians we never saw coming. As those Rotom possessions flickered out from our smart fridges and security cams, leaving a trail of fried circuits in their wake, the real chaos shifted outdoors, where the sky itself began to rebel. In the parched heart of Central Australia, during the blistering summer of 2023, a farming town called Coober Pedy watched its endless red dunes turn from dusty allies into merciless enemies. One dawn, the monsoon clouds that had sustained generations simply evaporated. Wells ran dry in hours, crops withered to brittle husks under a sun that burned 20 degrees hotter than any forecast predicted, and the ground cracked open like desiccated skin, swallowing irrigation pipes whole. You can picture the locals at first, hardened outback folk, mustering their herds under relentless heat haze, blaming El Niño patterns or corporate water grabs. But then came the tremors, subtle at first, like the earth groaning in its sleep, rattling tin roofs and toppling windmills. Seismographs in Sydney lit up, not with the sharp spikes of quakes, but slow pulsating waves radiating from a single point deep beneath the Simpson Desert. Satellites caught it next, a massive heat bloom, infrared signatures pulsing like a heartbeat, scorching the sand into glass-like vitrification. By week 2, international teams descended. Climatologists from NASA, Pokémon ecologists from the newly formed Global Phenomena Agency. They drilled cores from the fissures, pulling up samples laced with primal minerals, unknown to geology, crystals that hummed with latent energy when exposed to sunlight. And that's when the footage leaked. A drone feed, shaky and thermal, piercing the steam rising from a newborn canyon. There, half buried in magma-veined earth, stirred something colossal, reddish hide like cooled lava, dorsal spines piercing the surface like ancient volcanoes, eyes glowing amber through the dust. Groudon, the subterranean beast, legends whispered. It slumbered eons beneath tectonic plates, its awakening tied to the planet's thirst for dominance over water. Now this wasn't myth. Soil samples matched isotopic signatures from primordial seabeds, and the drought's radius, precisely 200 kilometers, mirrored seismic models of its territorial stirrings. Farmers reported mirages that resolved into fleeting glimpses, a tail lash sending shockwaves that buckled highways, bellows that warped air into visible heat shimmers. Relief efforts airdropped mag cargo herds to mimic its geothermal aura, hoping to lull it back to dormancy. But the beast shifted deeper, expanding the barren zone, forcing evacuations of 20,000 souls. While Australia's outback baked into oblivion, halfway across the Pacific, tropical paradises faced their own inversion of hell. Hawaii's Big Island, eternal summer haven for surfers and resorts, awoke one December morning to a freak whiteout. Palm trees sagged under 2 feet of powder, waves froze mid-curl into jagged bergs, and Kona coffee fields turned to skating rinks overnight. Tourists huddled in lava tube hotels as winds howled at 60 knots, dumping blizzards unseasonal by any metric, temperatures plunging to -10 in regions that hadn't seen frost since the Ice Age. Meteorologists scrambled, blaming Arctic outbreaks or chemtrails, but radar painted a different picture, a massive azure shadow slicing through trade winds, trailing cryofronts that defied thermodynamics. Articuno, the freeze Pokémon, its migration had veered catastrophically off course. Tracked via high-altitude balloons and orcapod spotters, those natural barometers of oceanic shifts, its path looped erratically from Antarctic fringes up through the equator. Feathers like prismatic ice refracted satellite signals, creating false radar ghosts, but wingbeat frequencies matched ancient lore, each flap seeding nucleation clouds that birthed hailstones the size of grapefruits. Biologists pieced it together from stranding events, penguin colonies migrating equatorward in panic, tropical fish kills from flash freezes. In the Philippines, rice paddies iced over mid-harvest, Bali's beaches buried under drifts that preserved flip-flops in perfect amber. One viral clip showed it perched on Mauna Kea, wings spread like a glacial cathedral, cryomantic aura flash-freezing lava flows into obsidian sculptures. Efforts to redirect it involved fleets of delibird releasing thermal pouches, but Articuno pressed on, its cries echoing like shattering glaciers, hinting at deeper imbalances pulling it from polar solitude. These weren't isolated tantrums. Groudon's drought plume clashed with Articuno's frost veils, birthing hybrid storms. Sand-laden squalls turned to sleet bombs over Indonesia. Alarms rang in Geneva at the United Pokémon Meteorological Division, where the weather trio became priority one. Groudon, the Earthshaper, its oceanic rival Kyogre, stirring hurricane nurseries off Peru with swells that swallowed cargo ships. And Rayquaza, the Sky Wardens glimpsed in stratospheric contrails, intervening only when primal fury threatened continental rifts. Global tracking mobilized like never before. Constellations of weather balloons, laced with castform sensors, drone swarms mimicking Rayquaza's ozone patrols, even submarine arrays pinging Kyogre's deep song reverberations. Data poured in, Groudon's seismic pulses syncing with Kyogre's tidal bulges, Articuno's cryo trails intersecting Rayquaza's jet streams. Satellites repositioned en masse, nations pooling resources for the Prisma network, a real-time overlay mapping legendary migrations against human grids. Picture the war rooms, screens blooming with heat maps, where Groudon's wake trailed Saharan expansion, Kyogre's cascades flooding Bangladesh anew, Rayquaza's spirals calming megastorms over the Atlantic. Field teams embedded in the fringes, trainers with Altaria flocks buffering Articuno's gales, geokinetic specialists channeling Groudon's quakes into geothermal taps. Successes mounted, a Latias-assisted relocation lured Articuno toward recovering ozone holes, easing tropical chills. Vibration dampeners coaxed Groudon into shallower repose, coaxing tentative rains back to Cuba PD. Yet the trio's dance revealed fragility, human sprawl encroaching on ley lines, pollution thickening the atmospheres they command. One near catastrophe in the Marianas saw Kyogre surface amid a typhoon, only for Rayquaza to descend in a meteor streak, enforcing balance with megahorn precision that parted clouds for days. Through it all, you feel the awe, don't you? The way these ancients don't just alter weather, they embody it. Primal forces woven into our skies, reminding us how thin the veil between control and surrender truly is. As tracking titans and interventions evolve, tougher questions loom about our role in their world, whether coaxing slumber or clashing head-on. That's the heart of Chapter 14, the ethics of combat, where we'll unravel the profound moral tangle of humans battling these elemental titans for survival. I hope you're as amazed by this as I am. If you want to stay updated on more content like this, make sure to subscribe and join our community of curious minds. Trust me, what's coming next will challenge everything you thought you knew. As the blizzards from Articuno's migrations finally thawed into uneasy spring rains, humanity turned its gaze from the skies back to the arenas we'd built ourselves. In the shadowed underbellies of cities like Saffron and Celadon, where the hum of Voltor-powered lights flickered against damp concrete walls, underground pit fights had been raging for decades. Raw, unfiltered clashes between trainers and their Pokémon that blurred the line between sport and slaughter. You can almost smell it still, the metallic tang of blood mixed with the acrid scorch of overcharged ember attacks, the roar of crowds packed into illegal basements, betting slips clutched in sweat-slick hands. These weren't the polished battles of storybooks. They were desperation-fueled spectacles where a desperate Machop might shatter its fists against a Raiden's horn, or a Pikachu's thunderbolt left scorch marks on fur and flesh alike. Trainers, often as broke as their opponents, pushed their partners to the brink, and sometimes beyond. Fatalities weren't rare. A primate's berserk rage could cave in a skull, human or Pokémon, while medical tents overflowed with gashes that wouldn't close and bones that refused to knit. Whispers of reform started in those very pits, carried on the voices of survivors who'd seen too many friends collapse in the dirt. A pivotal night in the Undercity of Vermilion changed everything. During a grudge match between two rival gangs, a golem's rockslide buried an entire ring under rubble, killing 3 spectators and maiming a dozen more. The headlines screamed across every network: Pokémon turned weapons, humans playing God, and public outrage ignited. Governments, already strained from Groudon's droughts, couldn't ignore the body count any longer. What emerged from that chaos was the Pokémon Combat Regulatory Act of 2037, birthing the first professional leagues. Overnight, the pits went dark, replaced by gleaming stadiums with reinforced barriers, on-site medics, and rules etched in stone. No legendaries without special dispensation, mandatory cooldown periods after knockouts, and referees empowered to halt a fight at the first sign of undue suffering. You'd watch these new bouts on massive holoscreens, the crowd's cheers echoing through purpose-built coliseums where Machamps grappled under floodlights, their muscles rippling like coiled steel cables, every slam and counter calculated for maximum thrill minus the needless carnage. Trainers became celebrities, their Pokémon elevated to stardom. Think of the undefeated Blastoise squad from Johto, shells polished to a mirror sheen, hydro pumps arcing like liquid rainbows across packed arenas. Revenue poured in from ticket sales, sponsorships by Pokeball manufacturers, even potion endorsements. Attendance skyrocketed. Families brought kids now, safe behind energy shields that hummed faintly with Jolteon-charged electricity. Yet beneath the glamour, questions lingered like smoke after a flamethrower. Had we truly tamed the beast, or just given it a nicer cage? Those questions found their sharpest edge in the labs racing to keep pace with the violence. Enter the potion revolution, a cascade of medical miracles born from desperation in those early league days. Traditional healing was too slow for the grind of back-to-back matches. A fractured wing on a Pidgeot meant weeks sidelined, careers derailed. But scientists at Sylph Co., drawing from ancient berries and the bioluminescent secretions of Shanxi, cracked the code on rapid tissue regeneration. Picture the first trials: vials of iridescent blue liquid, swirling with engineered proteins that mimicked a Pokémon's natural restorative aura. Injected or sprayed directly onto wounds, potions triggered cellular frenzy, fibers knitting at 10 times the human rate, nerves firing anew before the pain even faded. A scyther with a severed scythe arm, back slashing within hours, chitin gleaming as if freshly malted. Human trainers benefited too. A full restore patch sealed a gash from a stray razor leaf, leaving only a faint scar as souvenir. By 2042, potion tech had evolved into full regions, airborne mists deployed mid-battle via drone, saturating the field to heal both sides simultaneously. The science delved deeper, nanites suspended in a gel matrix, programmed to seek out damaged DNA strands, rewriting them on the fly. Critics called it playing with fire. Overuse led to Regan burn, where tissues grew back too fast, brittle and prone to shattering under stress. One infamous league final saw a Venusaur collapse mid-solar beam, its over-regenerated vines crumbling like dry rot. Still, the breakthroughs saved countless lives, turning what were once death matches into spectacles of resilience, where a Pokémon could rise from apparent defeat, eyes blazing with renewed fury. But as potions patched the body, they couldn't silence the growing chorus questioning the soul. Were these creatures, our partners, our weapons, truly okay with the fray? The sentience debates erupted like a chain of eruptions, fueled by leaked footage from those old pits. A whimpering Growlithe curling away from its trainer's prod, or a Kadabra's psychic glow dimming in exhausted defeat. Philosophers at Olivine University argued Pokémon possessed a spectrum of awareness, not human but profound, Lucario sensing emotions through aura, Alakazam crunching data at quantum speeds. Pain? Undeniable, etched in every flinch and howl. Protests swelled outside League headquarters, banners reading, "Battles aren't battles if they bleed." Ethicists pointed to wild herds. Why did a Tauros charge in the plains with joy, but slump in an arena? Neuroscans revealed spikes in stress hormones during fights, cortisol analogues flooding even the toughest hides. Counter-arguments flew back. Pokémon sought battle instinctively, like a Salamance's primal roar echoing territorial claims. Leagues mandated consent scans, psychic probes, confirming a Pokémon's battle eagerness via brainwave patterns, but skeptics decried it as pseudoscience, trainers gaming the system with treats and affection. You felt the tension in the air at those rallies, the chant of voices mingling with the distant crackle of thunderbolts from practice fields. Organizations like the Pokémon Rights Alliance pushed for bans on certain moves. Hyper Beam deemed too draining, Earthquake too indiscriminate, while others championed ethical arenas, open fields where Pokémon could flee if unwilling. Trainers split into camps, purists who saw battle as sacred evolution, reformers demanding retirement ages and therapy sessions with empathetic garde devoir. Through it all, the leagues endured, a fragile balance of spectacle and scrutiny, where a single controversy could topple empires, and none loomed larger than the Mewtwo incident, a clone shadow that would force every ethical line we'd drawn into the fire, questioning not just if we should fight, but if we could ever truly understand what fought back. While potion technology was patching up trainers and their Pokémon in the heat of regulated leagues, a shadow operation was rewriting the rules of creation itself. Deep in the Pacific, on an uncharted volcanic island, shrouded by perpetual storms, a team of rogue geneticists had been toiling in secrecy for years. Leaked classified documents, smuggled out by a whistleblower in the early 90s, first cracked open the lid on what they called Project Mewtwo. You can almost feel the humidity clinging to the air in that labyrinth of concrete bunkers, buried under layers of reinforced lava rock. Humidifiers hummed endlessly to mimic the tropical cradle of life, while banks of supercomputers churned through terabytes of mu DNA, that elusive, mythical genetic blueprint harvested from a single captured specimen years earlier. The scientists, backed by a consortium of military contractors from across the globe, weren't chasing pets or partners. They engineered a weapon, a psychic juggernaut fused with raw amplified power. Mewtwo emerged from its gestation vat, not as a miracle of nature, but as humanity's ultimate enforcer. Those documents paint a chilling picture of the early trials. Clone after clone destabilized, their cells rebelling in grotesque mutations, tentacled limbs twisting from torsos, eyes glowing with uncontained plasma before imploding in showers of ethereal sparks. The air in the labs reeked of ozone and charred flesh, technicians scrambling in hazmat suits as containment fields flickered. But the 17th iteration held. Mewtwo's violet form stabilized, towering at over 7 feet, its sleek armor-like hide pulsing with veins of raw psychic energy. It didn't cry out at birth, it simply opened its eyes, and the island's seismic sensors spiked as if the Earth itself recoiled. Word spread quietly at first through black market channels, those dog-eared memos stamped with redacted insignias, finding their way to intelligence agencies worldwide. Governments scrambled to verify the claims, dispatching stealth subs and satellite sweeps. What they uncovered wasn't just a lab anomaly, it was the dawn of something existential. Mewtwo wasn't bred for battles in arenas or even underground pits. Its genome had been laced with combat overrides, neural pathways optimized for tactical annihilation, psychic blasts calibrated to level city blocks, and a self-evolving intelligence that learned from every skirmish, adapting faster than any human strategist. The real fracture came months after activation, when the creature first bridged minds across oceans. Picture the scene in a dimly lit briefing room at the United Nations, late 1992. World leaders, presidents, prime ministers, generals sat rigid around a polished oak table, their advisors pale and sweating. No words were spoken aloud. Mewtwo's voice echoed directly in their skulls, a telepathic torrent cold as Arctic steel. "I am the pinnacle," it declared, its consciousness threading through secure lines, hijacking satellite feeds to project visions of apocalyptic fury. Fleets vaporized in psychic storms, armies crushed under invisible gravitic waves. This was the first documented case of a Pokémon piercing the veil of human-only communication, not with a trainer's bond, but as an equal or superior, forcing dialogue on the planet's most powerful. Panic rippled through those halls. Tapes from the session, later partially declassified, capture the chaos. Chairs scraping back, aides fumbling for jammed phones, one ambassador collapsing from the sheer mental pressure. Mewtwo didn't demand tribute or territory, it questioned existence itself. Why humanity had forged it as a slave to war, why it should serve architects too frail to wield its power. The threat hung unspoken: unleash me or face oblivion. Evacuations began from coastal cities as false alarms of psychic surges lit up monitoring stations. Stock markets dipped on whispers alone, traders eyeing the skies for that telltale purple aura. Island operatives reported escalating anomalies, security cameras glitched with phantom silhouettes, guards murmuring of nightmares, where Mewtwo's eyes bored into their souls, unraveling loyalties thread by thread. The creature paced its armoured enclosure, tail lashing against barriers that buckled like foil, its mind probing the facility's network, overriding locks, erasing logs, even compelling a lead scientist to smash his own console in a fit of induced despair. By the time extraction teams arrived, the lab was a tomb, bodies levitated in stasis, frozen in rictus screams, while Mewtwo had vanished into the ether, its escape masked by a manufactured typhoon that swallowed the island in fog and fury. the fallout reshaped global policy overnight. Treaties banned cloning research, Pokémon rights charters gained teeth, and psychic-type monitoring became a UN mandate. Yet whispers persist, Mewtwo sightings in remote tundras, anomalous energy spikes correlating with diplomatic crises. Was it truly designed for war, or did its awakening birth a guardian scorned by its creators? The documents hint at deeper layers, alliances with other legendaries perhaps, or a grudge that simmers still. Those leaked pages force you to confront the razor edge we walked. A single engineered being nearly toppled civilizations, its telepathic ultimatum etching itself into the annals of history as the moment Pokémon transcended tools into arbiters. But if Mewtwo's rage warped minds and bent reality at the seams, the anomalies waiting in Chapter 16, space and time distortion, will pull you through tears in the fabric of existence itself, where trainers vanish into wormholes and Dialga's roar echoes across centuries. While world leaders were still reeling from Mewtwo's telepathic warnings, telescopes in Chile's Atacama Desert locked onto a swarm of meteors streaking through the night sky, far brighter and faster than any natural shower. These weren't fragments of some distant comet. Radar tracked them, decelerating impossibly, weaving through the upper atmosphere like living entities with purpose. Amateur stargazers from Hawaii to Spain uploaded shaky footage, their excited chatter turning to confusion as the trails lingered, pulsing with an eerie violet glow that no bolide should emit. Astronomers at the European Southern Observatory scrambled, cross-referencing data with NASA's deep space arrays. The objects, dozens strong, entered at hypersonic speeds, shedding no debris, no fiery ablation. One lead researcher, Dr. Elena Vasquez, went live on a global feed, her voice steady, but eyes wide. These intruders were maneuvering, altering trajectories mid-descent to avoid collision. Spectral analysis revealed exotic particles, unknown isotopes laced with psychic resonance, signatures that matched nothing in our periodic table. As the first fragments pierced the mesosphere over the Pacific, seismic stations worldwide picked up harmonic vibrations, like the Earth itself humming in response. Panic rippled through scientific circles first, then the public feeds. Eyewitnesses in Indonesia reported the sky fracturing, brief glimpses of crystalline forms tumbling earthward, reforming mid-air into sleek tentacled shapes. Deoxys, that was the name pieced together from fragmented Pokédex archives, leaked years earlier, a mythic extraterrestrial Pokémon whispered about in underground forums. But this was no myth. Ground teams in the Philippines intercepted the first landed specimen, a pulsating orb that extended appendages, scanning the horizon with multifaceted eyes before phasing into hyper-acceleration, vanishing into the clouds. Militaries mobilized, but Deoxys was already gone, seeding the atmosphere with distortion fields that bent radio signals into nonsensical echoes. You can almost feel the chill in those early reports. The way pilots over the Indian Ocean described time stretching during flights through the residual clouds. Clocks on dashboards, lagging by seconds, then minutes. Deoxys didn't just arrive, it warped the fabric of entry, leaving behind pockets of altered reality that played havoc with satellites. GPS networks glitched, rerouting cargo ships into dead calms where compasses spun wildly. Fishermen off Japan pulled up nets filled with fish, aged decades in hours, their scales brittle, eyes clouded, as if they'd lived lifetimes in a blink. Word spread fast, but nothing prepared us for the ground zero of the fallout. The shattered remnants of Spear Pillar, high in the Sinnoh Mountains, where ancient ruins had long been cordoned off after Dialga and Palkia's rampage years back. Hikers venturing too close started vanishing, only to reappear days later, disoriented, speaking of loops, reliving the same storm-swept climb over and over, their watches frozen at the moment of entry. Rescue teams equipped with experimental chronometers fared no better. One squad emerged with beards grown inches long, recounting visions of futures where the pillar reformed into towering spires, only to crumble again in eternal cycles. Scientists from the International Pokémon Research Initiative airlifted in, deploying drones laced with temporal stabilizers borrowed from particle accelerator tech. The readings were nightmarish, gravitational anomalies fluctuating like heartbeats, pockets where gravity inverted, flinging rocks skyward only to let them drift back lazily. Time dilation hit hardest at the pillar's apex, where a researcher's exposure clocked him aging 2 years in 20 minutes, skin wrinkling, hair greying before their eyes, his screams echoing in voices that sounded decades older. Locals whispered of Giratina's shadow, the renegade Pokémon banished to realms beyond, but the data painted a colder truth. The ruins were destabilizing, threads of space-time unraveling like frayed rope. Eyewitness accounts poured in, raw and unfiltered. A climber named Thomas reported stepping into a fog bank and emerging on the other side of the pillar, facing himself approaching from minutes earlier, their eyes locking in mutual horror before the loop snapped. Park rangers documented flora blooming and withering in seconds, petals unfurling to dust under the same distorted aurora that Deoxys had trailed. Instruments captured infrasound waves warping into audible whispers, fragments of languages no human throat could form, hinting at intelligences observing from the fringes. The real dread settled when quantum physicists linked the dots. Deoxys' entry hadn't been random. Its psychic pulses resonated with Spear Pillar's latent energies, the same pillars that once summoned creation legendaries. Models projected a cascade, micro-tears in reality multiplying, feeding on each other until a full rift tore open. Not just any rift, the distortion world. That inverted hellscape theorized in forbidden Pokédex entries, where gravity twisted into knots, colors inverted, and physics bowed to malice. Simulations showed it spilling over, landscapes folding into Mobius nightmare geometries, living beings stretched across impossible dimensions, their forms preserved in eternal scream. Field teams pushed closer despite the risks, anchoring quantum tethers to map the breach's edge. One probe returned warped, its footage playing backward and forward in schizophrenic loops, revealing glimpses beyond, a vast, churning void where shadows moved with predatory grace, Giratina's silhouette coiling like smoke. Evacuations cleared a 50-kilometer radius, but the anomalies crept outward. Time slips reported in nearby villages, children waking to find toys from their grandparents' era, elders reliving childhood games with unnatural vigor. Governments downplayed it at first, blaming solar flares or experimental weapons, but leaked seismic logs told another story. Deoxys sightings multiplied, the Pokémon phasing through mountains, its form adapting, core shifting to attack mode as it probed the pillar's fractures. Psychic networks lit up with human empaths, sensing its alien curiosity. Not malice, but indifference vast as the cosmos. Could it be sealing the rift, or widening it for invasion? The uncertainty gnawed, especially after a military drone pierced the distortion field and broadcast static laced with coordinates. Spear Pillar, converging now. As containment efforts faltered, the world held its breath, wondering if this was the prelude to unraveling everything. Deoxys' dance with time and space forced us to confront how fragile our reality truly is, with Pokémon not just sharing our world, but capable of rewriting its rules. And that brings us to the precipice we've been inching toward all along, where the lines blur between partnership and peril. Chapter 17. Coexistence or conquest, a question that might decide if we thrive together or fall to the stronger will. As the temporal anomalies from Spear Pillar begin to stabilize, their ripples extend far beyond shattered ruins and flickering stars, forcing humanity to confront a question that's been simmering for years. Are Pokémon property, partners, or peers? In the grand halls of the United Nations in New York, delegates from every corner of the globe convene an unprecedented summit, their faces etched with the weight of a world forever altered. You can almost feel the tension in that vast chamber, air thick with the hum of translators and the faint electric buzz of hidden Rotom lurking in the smart systems overhead. Flags from over 200 nations drape the walls, but it's the empty seats at the central table that steal the breath, reserved for Pokémon representatives, a gesture born of desperation after Mewtwo's telepathic address shook parliaments worldwide. The agenda is stark: legal personhood for Pokémon. Not just rights to roam free in reserves, but full citizenship, voting, property ownership, even seats in governments. Japanese envoys cite ancient texts from Kanto, whispering of harmony between man and beast. American senators push back, their voices booming about economic collapse if every captured Pikachu demands back wages. But beneath the polished speeches, fractures run deep. Picture the lead delegate from Brazil, sweat beading on his brow as he recounts the Amazon's transformation, not by loggers, but by roaming herds of Tauros and Donphan, reshaping rivers with their charges. He argues for regulated capture, a necessary check on nature's fury, his hands gesturing wildly to holographic projections of flattened villages. Across the aisle, a professor from Sinnoh, eyes hollow from sleepless nights, studying Dialga's echoes, counters with data. Pokémon populations surging past human numbers in key regions, their migrations dictating crop yields and city expansions. If we don't grant them status now, he warns, we're not negotiating coexistence, we're surrendering to conquest. Outside those gilded doors, the streets pulse with a different rhythm. Radical groups calling themselves the Wildfire Alliance have turned protest into prophecy. Born from the ashes of Mewtwo's revelations, they gather in their thousands, banners fluttering like dragonite wings under sodium lights. You've seen the footage, masked figures releasing crates of captured Pokémon into urban parks, chanting for total liberation. No more Pokeballs, no more trainers. Their leaders, a mix of disillusioned ex-gym leaders and eco-warriors radicalized by Groudon's droughts, broadcast manifestos from hidden bases in the Hoenn wilds. One viral clip shows a Luxray shattering a research lab's containment fields, sparks flying as it frees a dozen experiments, the roar of the crowd drowning out alarms. These aren't fringe voices anymore. In Europe, bombings at Pokémon storage facilities, blamed on Alliance cells, have halted League seasons indefinitely. Their slogan echoes through graffiti on Berlin walls and Tokyo subways. Balls break, chains shatter. They point to the numbers. Relentless. Over 80% of wild Pokémon now outnumber humans in density across equatorial belts, their psychic networks weaving alliances we can barely fathom. A captured interview slips out. A young activist, voice steady, claiming telepathic bonds with a passing Alakazam, convinced her. Humans are the invaders, Pokémon the true stewards. Law enforcement hesitates. After Porygon's bank hacks and Rotom's grid blackouts, who trusts human-only security? Inside the summit, the debate spirals into the night. A pivotal moment unfolds when a delegation from Unova unveils classified footage, a Lapras pod negotiating passage through shipping lanes, their songs modulating sonar to demand tribute, fish hauls rerouted, captains yielding without a fight. Is this partnership or subjugation reversed? The chamber erupts as a neutral arbiter. An AI buffered against Rotom interference tallies votes. 62% favour provisional citizenship, with capture permits grandfathered but new ones requiring mutual consent, proven by psychic signature or vocal agreement. Cheers mix with jeers, but the real quake comes from the abstainers. Nations like Paldea, where Iron Valiant sightings have already redrawn borders. You sense the fragility everywhere now, that delicate balance teetering on a knife's edge. Walk through a modern city, say Goldenrod, and you'll see it. Humans sharing sidewalks with grazing ponyta, their flames flickering harmlessly thanks to urban flame-retardant coatings. Schools teach dual curricula, human kids paired with starter Pokémon for empathy drills. Yet dominance slips away. In rural Johto, farmers lease land to Vibrava swarms for their vibrations to aerate soil, paying in berries rather than currency. Hospitals integrate Ordino for diagnostics, their feelers more precise than any MRI. Economies pivot, Pokémon labour in mines, their strength unions outproducing machines, wages funneled into trust funds managed by Gardevoir councils. But whispers of conquest grow louder. Reports filter in from the shadows. Packs of mighty Aina, enforcing no human zones in African savannas. Absol herds predicting and preventing disasters by herding people to safety first. Radical groups exploit this, smuggling ultra beasts through wormholes left by Deoxys, arguing these invaders prove Pokémon sovereignty is destiny. Clashes erupt, trainers defending labs, alliance saboteurs striking at night. One dawn raid in Celadon City frees hundreds. The sky alive with freed Wingull blotting the sun, their cries a declaration of reclaimed skies. World leaders adjourn amid guarded optimism, treaties signed under the gaze of floating unknown, scripting the accords in mid-air. Yet as delegates depart, escorted by police Machamp, doubt lingers. Pokémon aren't just coexisting, they're reshaping society from the roots. Human innovation accelerates to match. Neural implants for trainer Pokémon mergers, cities with aerial walkways for flying types. But for every breakthrough, a loss. Wild areas expand, swallowing suburbs, forcing migrations. In boardrooms, corporations scramble. Pokeball manufacturers pivot to consent capsules, voluntary habitats with exit protocols. Leagues rebrand as diplomatic arenas, battles as cultural exchanges. You feel it in the air, that shift. Humans adapting, not commanding. A child in Lumiose no longer dreams solely of mastery. They ponder alliances, pacts with the unseen intelligences sharing our world. This teetering equilibrium, born of summit accords and street fire, sets the stage for what comes next. As radical calls for total liberation clash with fragile new laws, one truth emerges undeniable. Our future hangs on threads woven by forces beyond human grasp. Stay with me as we peer into the future of our world, where these tensions ignite possibilities you won't believe. As the echoes of that global summit faded, provisional citizenship for Pokémon swept through parliaments and councils worldwide. But it was the radical voices calling for liberation that ignited the true spark. You see, those groups didn't just protest, they forged alliances in the shadows, training wild Pokémon not for battles, but for partnership. A young activist in the rainforests of Brazil first documented it, a flock of Pidgeot carrying supplies to isolated villages, their wings slicing through monsoon downpours with a precision that rivaled any helicopter. Governments watched, then adapted. What began as reluctant tolerance evolved into something profound, a symbiotic bond reshaping humanity itself. Picture the subtle shifts at first. Trainers, once seen as captors, became symbionts. In bustling Tokyo streets, salarymen commuted alongside Jolteon, their electric fur humming faintly against the neon glow, powering personal devices with harmless static bursts. Doctors in London hospitals marvelled as chancy nurses distributed eggs that hatched into immediate aids, their soft bodies yielding compounds that accelerated human healing, far beyond our old pharmaceuticals. These weren't conquests, they were mergers. Pokémon physiology began influencing ours, subtle genetic echoes from prolonged exposure. Children raised near Gardevoir developed faint empathic senses, picking up emotions from a room without a word. Athletes in Sydney Olympics trained with mash hump, their forearms demonstrating lifts that pushed human limits, inspiring cybernetic prosthetics modelled on those rippling muscles. But the next stage, it's unfolding now, deeper than skin. Scientists in hidden labs, echoes of the Mewtwo days but ethical this time, study mega-evolution not as a spectacle but as a blueprint for mutual ascension. Imagine your Lucario syncing neural pathways with yours during a crisis. Its aura surging through your veins like adrenaline amplified 1,000-fold. We've seen it in disaster zones, a typhlosion in California's wildfires, flames bending to its will while bonded firefighters breathed easier, their lungs adapting to the smoke through some shared thermal resilience. This symbiosis isn't domination, it's co-evolution. Pokémon grow stronger in our structured world. Wild Rattata evolving into robust Raticate forms resistant to urban pollutants, while we borrow their resilience. Eyes that pierce fog like Noctul's, skin toughened like onyx scales against radiation. The line blurs, you and your partner becoming one organism, thriving where solo we'd falter. Across the 7 continents, these bonds manifest in sightings that steal your breath, captured on shaky cams and drone feeds, proving the magic bleeds into every corner. In the icy wastes of Antarctica, a lone Articuno glides over cracking shelves, its wings trailing frost that replenishes fresh water for penguin colonies, now guarded by vigilant glalie. Researchers huddle in tents, their Alolan Ninetales companions curling warm plasma around the group, turning sub-zero nights into habitable havens. Up in the Arctic reaches of North America, Aurora Borealis dances not just from solar winds, but from pods of lapras harmonizing beneath the ice, their songs vibrating auroras into hypnotic veils that migrating caribou follow unerringly. South America's Andes hide herds of donphin, thundering through mist-shrouded valleys, their trunks coiling around lost hikers with the gentleness of elephants twice their size, while llamas, real ones, graze beside, as if nature scripted the partnership. In Africa's vast Serengeti, Luxray prides stalk alongside lions, golden eyes piercing the dusk to spot poachers miles off, their electric roars scattering threats before they near. Maasai warriors bond with them now, spears traded for strategic roars that command the plain. Europe's ancient forests whisper of Celebi flitting through black forest canopies, time ripples, healing felled oaks overnight, villagers awakening to groves restored, their dreams laced with faint, verdant visions. Asia's Himalayas cradle Shangri-La echoes, where levitate users like Bronzong levitate supply yak trains over abyssal drops, monks meditating in sync, their heartbeats aligning to the Pokemon's resonant hums that ward off avalanches. Australia's outback burns with Charizard silhouettes against crimson sunsets, terraforming arid flats into fertile oases with controlled infernos, Aboriginal rangers riding them like living helicopters over floodplains. And deep in Oceania's coral realms, off coral atolls, Waylord breach with schools of mantine, their migrations towing fishing fleets safely through typhoon swells, bellies full of shared bounty. These glimpses aren't anomalies, they're harbingers. We've only scratched the surface of what this union unlocks. Cities pulse with Pikachu grids, lighting streets sustainably. Oceans teem with Lapras convoys, ferrying aid across warming seas. Wars? Obsolete. When a single Metagross can compute peace treaties in seconds, its psychic lattice-weaving diplomacy no human mind could match. Your daily life transforms, a Gardevoir sensing your stress at dawn, brewing tea with psychic precision before you stir. Children learn from Mew's playful teleports, boundaries dissolving as playgrounds become portals to wonder. Yet amid this dawn, you feel it, the quiet thrill that our world, once mundane, now thrums with untamed possibility. Pokémon didn't invade. They revealed what's always lurked beneath. Every shadow hides a spark. Every breeze carries a whisper. The planet's vastness unfolds, layer by magical layer, pulling you into a tapestry where humanity and these ancient allies weave the future together. Sleep now, knowing the adventure never ends. It's just beginning, right here in the world you thought you knew. What did you think of this journey? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this changed your perspective or taught you something new, consider subscribing for more mind-expanding content. And if you know someone who would find this as fascinating as you did, share it with them. These are the kind of conversations that matter.